Hello, everyone, and welcome to SmashBoxxTV Podcast 505.
Should we play our game again?
No.
Okay.
I've got no better guesses.
If you keep answering the same place,
Eventually.
you could get it right. Unless it's one we've already passed.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But no, not until we get to 520, which I'm almost positive is a pretty standard Arizona. Or is it West Bend? Or not West Bend. Bend, Oregon. I don't know. We're going to have to just wait. Somebody will chime in and let us know. 520. Or am I thinking of 620? Anyway, we'll worry about it when we get there. Welcome in, everyone. This is our live Tuesday night podcast. Right off the bat, I think what I can officially announce or talk about is the fact that we're going to have, at some point here, once she gets settled in, she's been traveling all day, like a lot of our competitors, we are going to have Emily Weatherman join us on the show tonight. Clearly, one of the biggest stories among the Dynamic Disc Open weekend that just unfolded.
Yeah, she popped up a few weeks ago, and there was some talk about her, but then she was quiet for a few weeks, and now she's back on the, well, not that she left the scene, but she's back in the spotlight.
Yes, so it'll be great to catch up with her and have a conversation with her and hopefully get to know her a little bit more. Many of you saw her at some time or another on this weekend's broadcast, whether it was a lead card or it was on the chase card on the final day. Either way, and of course, I know many of you already know her and or have seen her at tournaments. She's been in the game for a while. However, really stepping up onto the biggest stage in the brightest spotlight here this last weekend. I'd like to say this is what we feel like is some of the biggest exposure that we've had. So, also, we may or may not hear from Calvin Heimburg. Him and I exchanged a few messages. I know he said he was also just getting into town, a long day of travel. I think he's on another podcast as we speak right now, so we didn't formalize anything. And if it works out that we can have him pop in and it doesn't conflict with whenever Emily pops in, then we'll see if we can make it all work. So that's where we're at. And with that, I guess we could probably start off by talking about some of the stuff on over at the Dynamic Disc Open this weekend. Let's start with the MPO action.
Yeah, the MPO.
And bring it to you.
MPO action at the Dynamic Discs Open. As Terry said, Calvin Heimburg kind of walks this one in the final round. He got out to a really hot start going on the final round, getting the first 7 birdies. And then from there, kind of put it on cruise control. It didn't feel like anybody could catch him. Gannon Buhr was chasing. Gavin Rathbun started out with a 7, which really kind of hurt his chances right away, but still made a good run in the long run. But ultimately, Calvin gets his first win in over a year.
Which, that in itself obviously sounds a little bit crazy, knowing the season that he had last year, knowing how much we talk about him, obviously right there for, player of the year and making those arguments, him and Isaac Robinson and everything else. But to hear that he's gone more than a full year, that it took him that long, is we know how competitive it is in the MPO division, but at the same time, we also know how Calvin has consistently stood above the rest in his consistency. So to hear that, it feels a little bit wild. But
it does feel a little bit wild, but as you said, with the way players seem to pop off, different players, whether it's Gannon or AB or Presnell recently or Isaac Robinson, it's not surprising. I don't expect Calvin to go a year between wins, but it's not going to shock me if we don't see him get another 3 or 4 win season. That maybe he only gets 1, maybe 2 a year if he's lucky for the next couple of years while he's still young, so to speak. So it's going to be an interesting few years. And Calvin, we knew he was going to get one at some point because, again, he's been hanging out at the top, and he was able to pull this one in. So Calvin Heimburg shooting a 28 under par, besting Gannon Buhr by 3 strokes. Then Gavin Rathbun, who a name we've been mentioning quite a bit this year. Mm-hmm. It feels like every other event that guy pops off. And Gavin just maybe my favorite player because of how quick that son of a gun throws. He doesn't do, I think he stands there. He knows his game. He knows what he's practiced. He probably just kind of feels the wind as he's waiting to throw, gets up and throws. It's amazing. I love it. I absolutely love how fast he plays. Fourth place, another young name that we've been talking a lot about, and that's Joseph Anderson, Joey Buckets. He took fourth place, shooting 22 under par. He lit up the back nine.
Yeah, and obviously overall that entire round. What a way to close out the event. Like you were just saying, lighting up the back nine, getting, what is that, 8 in a row?
Yeah,
getting 8 in a row to finish it out. But then overall, the 13 under, unofficially rated a 1084
and I believe
round.
A course record out there.
Yes,
So
then became the course record. Obviously, Heimburg right behind him with his 12 under. Heimburg had just as many birdies, getting most of the work done on the front, but ultimately had the single bogey, and that led him to the 12 under. But yeah, Joey Buckets, how many spots? Moving up 13 spots on that final day is certainly impressive as well, and just edging out our guest and our major champion from last weekend in Andrew Presnell.
A good comeback week. A lot of people would maybe expect him not to have this kind of week coming down from a major high, so to speak. And he came out and performed, and on a course that maybe he's not necessarily picked for. This is a big, long, wide open course. His game is not necessarily distance in the field, although for most of our average players, he throws far enough. But compared to some of our other power players, that's not what he's known for. But he comes out and shoots a 21 under par, tying Ricky Wysocki. Ricky had just a horrendous back nine compared to some of the other guys. I believe he shot, looked like about even. No, maybe one down on that back nine. Well, Joey Buckets is shooting 8 down on the back nine. So that's Ricky fell a little bit there, falling 4 spots on that final round. Chris Dickerson, another guy who hasn't seemed to miss the top 10 this year, coming in 7th place. 8th place, Gavin Babcock, not a name we've talked about too much this year. 9th place, Isaac Robinson. Isaac jumping up 8 spots on that final round to get to a tie for 9th with Mason Marshbanks. That's your top 10, Terry.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting takeaways that you can find buried within there. As you just said, a couple of the names that we're not necessarily used to seeing. And it's fair to say one of the bigger stories is that Ricky out in front is generally so dominant. And that's not really a secret. There's a stat, I think it was 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8, something along those lines, where he's been out in front going into a final round when he's had the lead, and then goes on and holds on to it. And we say it all the time in the broadcast booth for that exact reason. You don't want Ricky to get too far out in front of you, because then
you'll never catch him.
Yeah, he just feels like you'll never catch him, and he can just continue to roll on. And running into the problems that he had out there during that final round was really interesting to see. Now, I only heard some of the calls and some of the things that were being said as I was out actually on Chase Card this weekend, watching along, but then listening to the booth the entire time. And so I'm trying to pay attention to everything that's going on my card, on the Chase Card that I'm reporting on. But yeah, Ricky just with that slow start. And then obviously part of that conversation can continue to say, was there a factor of Ricky playing up to either his standards or playing well? And was there also just a component of Calvin being unstoppable? Like,
I think I think that's some of it. Trying to chase down Calvin Heimburg is no easy thing. I mean, you just talked about how tough Ricky is. Calvin can't be that much harder to do at these events. I know Calvin has had an issue with the final round at some of these events, some of the majors where he is kind of tailed off. But Ricky ultimately, even early on, 2 OBs in the front 9 doesn't help, and then a hazard and 2 more OBs. So ultimately 4 OBs and a hazard on that final 9, that final 18 really just killed him and just didn't let him catch up. But you're right, trying to probably push and take down and catch Calvin, not an easy thing, and you can easily understand how someone like Ricky, who we've said before, does he care about second place? Does he care if he takes second versus fifth? Probably a little bit, considering he has talked about consistency so much and how well he plays. But I still think he falls those few spots chasing that win more often than not.
Yeah, and there's this, all or nothing mentality, and I don't know if there's much else to say other than a few select players like Ricky at this point do seemingly only care about that win. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. They don't have anything else. Rick doesn't have other things to prove necessarily in terms of taking second at every single event this year. Yes, of course, that would be in his back pocket in terms of the consistency, but the win is what really matters to him the most, winning at all costs. And nothing for nothing, I didn't see the action. I don't think any of you did either. You have to assume that's where Paul Macbeth is in the sense of how he was closing out this round as well. Because at one point, he was, 8 under through 12? Or 8 under through 14, or maybe even more than that. What is that math there?
He was 10 down through 14.
Are you sure you're not on the... I was going to say, is this the first round?
No, this is...
Okay, this is the last round. Okay, because I thought he blew up on the final hole.
He blew up on the 2 final holes, or 2 of the 3 final holes.
Okay.
16, where he missed the island. And then
must have went after the putt.
Probably went after the putt
because it was all or nothing at that point. Yep. And then I have any idea honestly that happened on 18. I don't know. Did they show it?
He went for the. I don't think they showed it. I don't think they had a camera on him. My understanding is he went for the island on eagle every single round.
Okay. So, it's just so crazy to think about how good that round was going. I'm sorry. What did you say he was? 10 through 14?
Yeah, he was 10 through 14 with an eagle.
So you heck, you've even finished with a couple of pars, and you finish out with a 10 under. That's a solid round. You're moving up. I mean, just think, moving up. I know this is woulda, coulda, shoulda stuff.
6 spots would
take off 6 strokes off his score.
He would have been tied for 11th.
And instead finished in 22nd, 23rd.
Yeah, there was no chance. There was no chance he was going to get the win on that final round.
Of course,
but he could have broke into the top 10. But ultimately, if you look at his final holes, hole 18, round 1, he takes an 8. Round 2, he gets a birdie, and round 3, he gets a 9. I think he went for. I don't know if he didn't go for the eagle. Maybe the wind wasn't right on the final round because.
We're out of position. There's some places on that hole where no matter what you do, you can't go for that eagle.
Can't get the eagle. Yeah.
So I'm not sure as to what happened there, but that was clearly an all or nothing output. That was kind of my whole point. Is he didn't care if he shot a 4 under or an 8 under, or a 10 under. He wanted that 12 or 13 or 15 or whatever he could have possibly gotten to. He's at a point in his career where he can do that, where plenty of other people, I think, who are in that stage are thinking, man, just finish out relatively strong. Maybe I have this hiccup on 16. I'll see what I can do to, finish out solid on the last hole or two, and I'm going to move up and earn a couple extra grand.
Yeah, I mean, think about someone like...
He's not as concerned about that.
Gavin Rathbun, Joseph Anderson, Joy Buckets, Andrew Presnell probably even at this point still, now that he's back on the elite team now, so that's going to help. But those 3 guys right there, and probably Gavin Babcock in 8th, all would love to move. They're happy when they get to top 10. If they can get to top 5, that's great. And of course, like you said, of course they're pushing for the win. But I mean, they're probably not, risking. An eagle on 18 if they feel it could drop them down 4 spots.
Yeah.
It's just not in them. Whereas if someone like Gannon Burr, Calvin Heimburg, Ricky, Chris Dickerson, they would probably all take that risk because they have, like you said, they have nothing to prove. They've got the wins in them. They can just keep going. And that's one of the reasons those guys can put the pressure on some of these other guys. These other guys know that, guess what? Calvin's got nothing to lose. If he takes 2nd, 1st, or 5th, he's not going to crack a smile either way.
Yeah. One of the things, I know you touched on it, and he specifically called it out. Presnell posted on his Instagram saying, "No major hangover for me this week in Emporia. I was able to snag a top 5 finish at the Dynamic Disc Open, my best Elite Series finish of the year. I had a good time hanging out with friends all week and made for a fun getaway trip for Peyton and I. She was a great caddy for me." And then he said, "Big news coming this week. What do you think it is?"
I'm guessing they're going to announce his Elite Series Tour disc. If I had to take a guess.
I mean, if we're talking presidential races, there might be some kind of
maybe a vice president announcement
or a big platform, an official platform statement. Maybe a trip to court. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on in the presidential realm these days for lots of different people.
You don't know. We don't know.
Maybe he's going to be showing up for some debate somewhere in some capacity. I don't know. But anyway, great to see him, like you said. Easy probably after such a big win in everything that he went through over the last week to then come back and be able to focus up on a course that necessarily isn't suited very well for his game. It was very impressive. So you want to talk about trending in the right direction. I think it's certainly fair to say that he's all part of that. And then it's, there's only so much you can say about it, but yes, a lot, as you just said, you enjoy watching Gavin play, as have I for many years. There's something to be said about him. And then on the FPO side, in a somewhat similar stance, him and Lisa Fakis, both with either non-major manufacturers or an open bag philosophy. And the parallel there is actually kind of interesting that both of them having really good weekends at this particular event. And that is a continued conversation piece is, hey, they're not sponsored. Will they be looking for a sponsor? Is that a priority? Will it happen mid-season? Those are all things that are still unknown, but
I could see Gavin picking up a sponsor mid-season. I don't know about Lisa, just because Lisa went into this season and I think she had maybe some opportunities and didn't take them. Gavin, I believe, was maybe unsure of how his season was going. If money talks. If someone throws either of them the right opportunity, I think they take it. But
yeah, so that's what we saw, and it'll be interesting to see if that becomes any kind of conversation piece for Gavin moving forward or not.
Some other stories, particularly on the final round. Ezra Robinson, again, having a very rough final round, dropping 8 places. He was in third place. Unfortunately, he just has this continued knack the last few weeks of playing poorly that final round. I don't know if it's the pressure. I don't know if it's the pressure he's putting on himself, external pressures, what it is, but unfortunately, he just can't seem to lock down that final round. Chris Clemens earlier in the weekend getting the ace on 16, awesome shot. Anthony Barella kind of middling at the event, ends up taking 14th. Not quite where he would have wanted to be on this, but we're kind of going into a series of events that might favor him over on the West Coast. We'll see.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to say, wow, Anthony Barella, who has had so much success this year, to say, man, he really had an off tournament. Whereas you rewind a year or two ago, and you're like 14th, you're like, okay, yeah, that's that's not overly shocking in one way or another, and you're thinking no big deal. But with the season that Barella has started off with, yes, it almost felt like a little bit of a shock to see that he had this 14th place finish, but I don't think anybody has to be concerned or anything of that nature. No. But yeah, the last 2 weekends he's gone 10th place and 14th, and now we'll see what he can do when he picks things back up at an OTB Open. All right, that's it on the MPO side. One other thing of note that is definitely was interesting, and I wonder if I can find it very quickly, was the fact that we saw Cole Redolin.
Oh, ghost. He ghosted hole 16.
Yeah, Cole Redolin opted to throw his tee shot on 16, presumably left the disc there unless he had a friend or a card mate eventually pick it up. I don't think that was his concern. But throws the tee shot on 16 and then essentially picks up his bag and walks off.
He pieces out.
This was driven, my understanding from his post, was largely driven, he obviously wasn't playing that well all weekend, but this was also then driven by the fact that the FPO playoff was taking place as well, and that was, we'll say, part of his... I'll just read it. I guess I don't want to interject at all. There's no reason to, because he wrote what he wrote. He said, DNF from DDO. He also said, got to do what you got to do. LOL. The FPO finished the round and had to run a playoff, which stopped our card for about 45 minutes. Which that in itself kind of confuses me. That's not the point. I decided to walk off because the last 3 holes didn't matter anyway. People always say they are proud of never dropped out, but I did it for logistical and practical reasons. This is definitely my first time doing so without being sick or injured. My play was really poor. However, I saw potential that just needs to be refined. Champions Landing has always been a tough track for me, but it won't stop me from coming back and giving it my all. I apologize to all my family and friends that I'm disappointed with this decision. However, my goals are set higher. Not proud of myself at all for throwing in the towel too early in round 2. I gave up and let myself spiral in the dark mental space. I'm excited to get home, regroup for the West Coast swing. Miss you, Oregon. Of course, this has been met with mixed reaction.
Yeah, there are some people who feel that if he's not in a good mental state, let him be. Walk off the course. Why continue to put extra stress on yourself? There's some people that say, "Hey, you're not injured. It's your job to play disc golf. You are representing a manufacturer, multiple sponsor, mm-hmm. and you walk off the course healthy because you're not playing well. What's your deal?" So there's 2 or 3, or I'm sure there's multiple takes on it. I just looked at some of his rounds. Round 1, he finished up 4 straight bogeys, 15 through 18. Round 2, 16, 17, and 18, he went double, single, single. And then, of course, round 3, obviously, he bailed on the round, so he went +4 on each of them.
Here's what, if I read that post correctly, or should I say interpret it correctly, maybe more importantly than reading it, I don't believe that he does that if that FPO playoff doesn't jump in front of him.
True. I think.
And does that change the dynamic, pardon the pun, or the situation at all? Do you assume that he plays out the round, he gets to hole 16, it's presumably clear he's ready to throw, he throws and plays 16, 17, and 18?
Probably. The Instagram post he showed, he drove the hole
mm-hmm.
and then walked off. So did he drive after the playoff went through?
That's would be my understanding.
Or did he drive and then they're like,
oh yeah, that's a good question. As in, did they drive and then all of a sudden they walked up?
No, well, I mean, he knew he was walking off at that point, but
yeah.
But did they say, "Hey, you guys can drive, but we're gonna come through"? That wouldn't make sense to have if you had the opportunity to leave your discs there. So he probably, what I don't understand is why wait for the 45 minutes?
Yeah, that does.
And
yeah,
then
there's something I'm missing here.
Then walk off. Like you're sitting there. Maybe it just all builds up, and finally he's kind of like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm out of here. I don't understand. There's got to be something, as you said, something more to it as to why you'd even throw a disc unless you're donating it and you're just like, hey, you can have this disc, or I want to throw it and see if I get it on the island,
or see if I ace.
That's true, because he did kind of run at it. And so if you listen to that video, you hear someone say, "Yeah, that would be crazy. Get in," because they all knew he was leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone on the card knew he was leaving.
Do you? I mean, I know he says he's committed to leaving. You ace that. Do you not? You don't retrieve it and you just continue to walk off?
That would be kind of. I'll say I don't agree with the decision, but that would be kind of a ballsy move right there. That just throw it, smash it, and then. See ya. Somebody donate the disc to somebody.
I don't know, yeah. But at any rate, it was definitely met with mixed reaction. We certainly understand mental health, mental stability, all of those things. Someone saying on the board right now specifically, like, it's okay if you're struggling mentally, but to make that video making a joke of it seemed very disrespectful and distasteful.
I can see that take.
Yeah, and I think there are probably 20 different ways to look at this, and I'm not sure any one is more right than the next. People are going to come into this with a different perception, and they're going to leave with a slightly different angle to it, and I completely understand that. So it was something interesting of note. There's no doubt about that, and and then of course we got to see how he gets logged. It's currently listed as an 888. Does that affect his rating? Because he's officially withdrawing in order to preserve, to preserve his rating, but he's withdrawing. But is he telling people, is he not? And then what's the reasoning? And then making it public. I'd be interested to talk to the rules.
It doesn't, my understanding is that it doesn't matter if you withdraw and don't tell the TD in the middle of the event, in the middle of the round. Like just walking off.
I would have to look it up.
Correct. The only way you get an 888 is if you knowingly do it to preserve your rating.
Well, let's not postulate on rules. More importantly,
we'll figure it out later.
More importantly, we have one of our biggest stories, as we just said, from the weekend, and it looks like she is just about ready. I believe. I think she can hopefully hear us and is probably ready to go. And with that, our very special guest making her SmashBoxxTV debut is one Emily Weatherman. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are y'all?
I'm very good. I met you and talked to you this weekend. I'm Terry. This is Johnny V, who hasn't been out on the scene in a while, but this is Johnny V. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So first, let's get it right out of the way. Congratulations on one heck of a weekend. We opened the show by saying you were clearly one of the big stories of the weekend. We have our winners and we have playoffs and, we have all this stuff. But in addition to all of that, seeing you perform, getting on, into a tie for the lead, being on a lead card, being on a chase card, how does that all feel, 2 days after you're done? How does that feel now, the weekend?
Honestly, it feels right. Like, I felt like I belonged there. For the longest time, I went through like a lot of self-doubt coming into this. But for the first time, I think it just finally felt like I was in the right place.
Now, a couple of the basics. I know we talked about some of it on the broadcast and whatnot, but you're 18 years old, and this is the first we're seeing of you to this scale. I know that you and your dad and your family played disc golf, and that's kind of where you got into it, but did you have idols or outside influences or people, golfers on the men or women's side that you've kind of looked up to or aspired to be like or learn anything from their games?
So growing up, I would always play with my dad. My dad was great. He taught me a lot of what I know. I also played with a guy named Joe Cortez who lived in my hometown. We would always play doubles events together. And I would say a lot of my putting comes from him. I learned my putting from him. He was a great putter. Things have changed since then in my putting routine and all that. But he was definitely one of them. And then outside of like my hometown, honestly, I just like to watch the FPO. I don't think I really had a specific FPO player that I wanted to be like. I just wanted to be there and experience it as well.
Now, I think it's fair to draw a few similarities from you to some of our other top performing FPO players. There's some obvious ones when you look at your stature and then you look at home state, the father-daughter playing. Like that sounds like, we could close our eyes and that sounds like Paige Pierce in a lot of ways, right? In terms of some similarities. Paige Shue, who I know you admire and look up to as well.
Yes.
Stature, all those types of things. Dad, daughter playing, again, kind of similar. When you think about the tour and you think about playing and being a professional disc golfer, is that your number one goal right now in terms of your life and your path that you're on?
Yeah, I would say so. I really live life as like enjoy every moment of it, or every moment that you can. And so as long as I'm having fun with it and I'm still able to do it, this is what I want to do.
Now, I'm looking at your upcoming events. You've got Santa Cruz coming up this weekend,
Yes.
and then you're doing OTB. You're not going up to Portland, is that correct? And instead taking a few weeks off and next is the Majestic. What's going on with Portland and the Beaver State area, and then maybe the end of the year as well, where we don't see you signed up yet?
Yeah, so I I don't have a tour card, so I have to do the Monday qualifiers. And so that's what I'm planning on doing for Portland and Beaver State. I have like a whole list of tournaments in my notes. I couldn't tell you the order of any of them or which ones they are, of where I'm playing Monday qualifiers or where I may be on the wait list for them. But I am trying to go to as many as possible.
Yeah, a couple follow-ups to that. And again, we see you show up, have this performance, and then everyone probably immediately says, what do you mean she can't get into other events? Well, you haven't, been around, so to speak, and earned your way into it. Does this top finish this weekend? That doesn't necessarily secure anything for the rest of the year, does it? What is it? Is there a way to get into those other events later in the year without having to do Monday qualifiers? Is that still possible? I don't know how that all works.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I'm still also trying to figure that out, trying to figure out all the different things I could do to get in. I guess I'm hoping that this top 3 finish helps with that, or maybe some of the tournaments that are coming up might help if I play well in them as well. But as of right now, I don't think that helps anything.
Yeah, and excuse me, I think I'm thinking of a few weeks ago, when we were broadcasting Champions Cup, there was a matter of if someone finished in such and such spot, that guaranteed their tour card. And I guess that's what I was thinking, but that might have been specific because it was the major. This weekend in particular, upcoming weekend, as you're heading out to Santa Cruz, knowing Vegas was happening, knowing there's a Q Series event, the 303 in Colorado, knowing that Masters Cup is going on, what led you to your decision to go to, Masters Cup specifically as opposed to any of the others?
So one thing is, since I'm already signed up for the OTB Open, I figured I might as well just come down here and play this one. Also, I am traveling with Rob and Chandler, and they're playing this event, and so I just decided to book it down here with them.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. Is it fair to say that because you're new to tour life and doing what you're doing, most of the courses and most of the things you'll see this year will be pretty much brand new to you? Or have you played any of these other places that we're kind of used to seeing on tour?
Yes, they're all new. They're all new.
Yeah.
So this last weekend, I played Junior Worlds in Emporia 2022, 2021, or 2020, I don't remember. But I kind of knew the course. I think I knew like the front 9 maybe. So that one was like kind of familiar. But other than that, they've all been brand new to me, and they still will continue to be brand new to me.
So what have you've played all the DGPT except for chess.com. What's been your favorite so far?
Yes.
What type of courses do you really enjoy or look forward to going to? Do you prefer the DDO style, or do you prefer more, we'll say, like a Beaver State?
So I actually don't know the Beaver State course.
Wooded.
I was just going to say.
Well,
yeah. Honestly, I really liked the Texas States course. That one fit really well with my game. I also really like the DDO course. Wooded, I like all disc golf. All disc golf is fun to me. It's just a matter of, will I play the course well, or will I kind of not play the course well? But it's all really fun, and I enjoy learning new courses, and I know that next year on tour, going back to these courses, I'm going to be even better than I am this year.
Well, so when you look at, as Johnny was just mentioning, we see the DGPT events this year: 35th, 22nd, 37th at U.S. Women's with a larger field, that 8th place where you just talked about the Texas States, but then 36th at Jonesboro, 24th at Music City, and then a third. Like a relatively stark contrast. You weren't necessarily averaging in the top 10 or 15. You were averaging much higher, and then this weekend, just the gloves come off and you come out swinging and then some. What was it about this weekend in terms of that led you to such a successful finish?
So I had some kind of personal stuff going on at Jonesboro and at Music City. So that was a part of the not so great play. Another part of that was those courses were very elevated, and I am from West Texas, and we don't really have much elevation, so that was kind of new to me, trying to learn how the wind plays with all the elevation and all of that. So hopefully next year I'll kind of have it down and show up a little better on those courses. This last weekend, I think I just finally got back in my groove and started feeling better about all the personal stuff that's been going on. I felt more like myself in my mind, and it physically felt more like myself. So I think that's probably what the difference was.
Have you had a chance to play De La yet, or are you not there?
We just got here.
Got here. All right. Well,
yeah.
I want you to take everything you learned from Jonesboro and Music City about elevation, and hopefully store that away and bring it to De La, because a lot of up and down there.
Yeah, and keep your fingers crossed that you don't get daylight or it rolls away.
Yeah, slow discs. Slow discs.
I heard about that.
I was just going to ask,
Rob was
what
telling me about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, what have you either through coverage or just through conversation, what's your anticipation of the De La Viega course this weekend? Or because I know you're playing actually a couple different ones, but what's your anticipation about De La specifically?
Honestly, I saw the first 3 holes. That's all I know.
Okay.
And yeah, Rob was just telling me about the rollaways, and I was just like, well, hopefully that doesn't happen to me, but if it does, it is what it is.
You can always abandon a lie. That's what we say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something that you've talked about is that you feel, maybe your strong suit can be your putting, which obviously I don't think will hurt you on any course, regardless of the style. What are some of your insights to putting that have made you successful, or where you found your success? What are some of the insights, if you were to explain it to a brand new person and how you've been able to perform well? What are some of the things that you go through or think about when it comes to your putt?
So something kind of different, I think, from everybody else is I never will choose a spot on the basket to aim. I will always aim at the middle, because in my mind, I know what needs to happen for the disc to get into the basket, depending on wind or whatever. In my mind, I have it all in there. I visualize the putt. So I'm always aiming at the middle because that's where I want to hit. But other than that, like my stance, I've messed with my stance so much. And I just recently kind of widened it, so it's like a not exactly staggered, but also not a straddle putt. It's kind of in between, closer to staggered, I would say. So that is like a big thing to try and get my back leg kind of out of the way, I want to say, is why I do that. And having a routine. Having a routine is a big part, and I know that a lot of people say that. It is very true. Having a routine that you stick to is huge with putting.
Just to dial in on that a little bit more, what do you feel like your routine consists of, mentally and physically? What is that? What does your routine to mean in your head to you?
So my routine is just like visualizing it, going through it maybe 1 or 2 times, and taking at least 1 deep breath before I release the putter. Deep breaths are very huge in my routine for drives and putting.
Yeah, we see Missy Gannon do the same thing before almost every drive. She stands there at the back of the tee box, takes a big breath, probably envisions what she wants to do, and does it. It's not a bad routine to follow, as we can see.
And I know you talked about who you've played with before and some of your earlier, more formative play, but is there any MPO or FPO player that when you think about their game or their style, even anything to do with their form, is there anyone that you either feel like you've mimicked or in any way emulate or look up to or anything? Is there any other player that you could connect with in that sense?
Honestly, I wouldn't say that I have mimicked anybody. I'd say I kind of found my own kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
But I will also say that talking to Own and hearing about like her mental game, the way that she explains her thought process about disc golf is somewhere that I want to be, because she has a great mental game and I would love to be right there with her.
Yeah, and I think most of the world, from what Own then also displays outwardly, I think most of the world loves what she brings to the table. Usually one of the largest, loudest cheerleaders on the card for all the other players. And then, it also feels like she always takes responsibility for her own throws, her own actions, just everything that happens. Like I feel like she pretty much, pardon the stupid pun, yeah, she owns it. But that's what I feel like you get out of her, and I love even the introspective where she's always says, like some days I have bad days, and I think that's big for a lot of our players to recognize is you can be one of the best in the world, but you still got to be afforded an off day once in a while.
Yeah.
When you go into this final round this weekend, and knowing that things are so competitive, knowing that things are so close, what is your mentality being on the chase card, going into your last 18 holes?
So honestly, right before the round, I had a coffee with a shot of espresso in it. And I was just going. I was energetic. My warm-up went great. I was just ready. I had kind of no thoughts besides I can do this. That was my only thought process, was I can do this. I'm here for a reason. I got myself here. I'm going to continue to show that I deserve to be here.
And I have to ask then, does that at all conflict with your sponsor? Can you talk about you kind of right now are without a major disc manufacturer, but is it Raise Energy? Is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Raise Energy.
Yeah, talk about them.
Yes. So that is Raise Energy. We have a bunch of different energy drinks. They're all no sugar, no dyes. They're great. They taste great. That particular morning, I was very much in a coffee mood. I was pretty exhausted. It had been a long week. So coffee was there, and I was like, I think I'm going to go with that for today. But yes, Raise Energy is great. Raise Energy always gets me very pumped up for the round. So, yeah, I love both. Coffee, energy, all
just to follow up on that, though, I got to ask, how did that come about? That are they local to where you are out of Texas, or like how did that relationship get started?
Yeah, so back home we have a guy that kind of runs it for Texas. Like it's out of Texas, the big company, but he runs it for Texas and is kind of like the disc golf sponsor of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like a regional rep that has a connection.
Yeah, yeah, a rep is a good word for it. Yeah. So I've known him a long time, and he saw me play, and he's watched me over the years get better, and he was like, "Hey, I really want to sponsor you," and then we're here.
Perfect.
So.
Okay.
So if you're not sponsored by a major disc manufacturer yet, what are you throwing? Like, what does your bag consist of? Do you lean towards one manufacturer? Do you just have a good variety? Is there something like, I like these mids, but these putters? Like, tell us a little bit about your bag.
Yep. Very mixed. So I have a lot of Innova. I throw a lot of Destroyers. I have a turn Firebirds. So my main drivers, I would say, are Innova. Mids, I have 2 Lone Star mids. 1 mint disc mid, and I also have some trilogy mixed in there as well. My harps I depend on my harps for my up shots, and then my putters are mint profits. So very, very mixed, and I don't know what to do about any offers that I'm gonna get. So
well, I mean, Other than your drivers, it's very Texas.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's one angle. Now, I guess with that, and I'm clearly not unique in asking this question, is especially since Sunday afternoon, have any major manufacturers reached out to you, and how will you, if so, if they haven't yet or they eventually do, how are you gonna approach that decision making here mid-season?
So I'm going to definitely take my time with it. I'm not going to rush to any decisions. I'm also kind of asking others to give their opinions on it, just so I make the right decision. I'm not just, I don't really know much about this yet. I'm still learning. So anybody that I can ask that can kind of help me to make a decision, I am doing that. Which is another reason why I'm not going to rush into anything. I'm going to kind of like hear out different offers and see what fits best.
Do you have any formal?
Management?
No, I was going to say goal in terms of, by the time, you're at the World Championships or maybe by the time of 2025, do you have any timeline or goal where you think, I really would like to be locked in with some given sponsor, or is even the timeline wide open?
Nope, the timeline is wide open. I'm just going with the flow of everything, seeing where this road takes me.
Have you, speaking of what I kind of mentioned to Terry, have you talked to anybody about management as far as agents or anything like that for who, I know obviously on the tour, there's Nate Perkins, who I think is still doing some of that, working with players to work on sponsorships. I know there's a few other companies out there. Have you been in contact with any of them or talked to any other players about that
or
type
LWS or anyone else?
I actually have not,
Okay.
but that is something that I probably will be looking into.
Yeah, I think not only can they assist and do some negotiating, which might be awkward, but obviously they're going to be able to provide additional insight because of some of the history that they have. So that might be where it could really be helpful to you to explore the different options, especially if you don't know really, how good or bad is any one offer, going to be actually be until you talk to other people. I guess speaking of, goals and timelines, obviously you're competitive, but do you have an expectation or a goal as to when you think you could be crowned champion at an elite series or major event?
I'm pushing for it every week that I play. Honestly, I'm just trying to play the course. I'm not worried about anybody else in the division. I'm just playing the course, playing rating, just trying to be the best that I can be in that moment.
When you look at the other women in the division, where do you see your deficiencies? Like when you go like, I really need to be better at this, whether it's forehand or backhand or distance or C2 putting, like where are your deficiencies on the course that you feel you need to work on in order to get to that level?
Definitely my forehand, and as I learned this past weekend, my patent pending shots are not great. So those two things are what I'm going to be focusing on in practice for sure.
Yeah, and
you'll need that at Dayla.
I was just going to say, forehands, of course, I feel like those always are good for scrambling, but a patent pending of sorts feels like a shot that will probably, if we fast forward like 4 days or 5 days, you're going to say, yeah, I had like 9 of those this weekend or 20 opportunities.
Yeah.
Just the way that course lays out.
Yeah, I think I had 6 this past weekend at the course I was at. So
now, with regard, I know we're kind of bouncing backwards, but with regard to this weekend, did I hear that the event it's not exclusively at Dayla this weekend for the Masters Cup? Are you playing 2 or 3 different courses? Are you playing 3 different courses?
So we're playing Dayla twice, but 2 different layouts.
Okay.
And then
Pinto
and
Lake?
then yeah, Pinto Lake is also one that we're playing.
Okay, that's what I thought I heard. And I know one of the maybe some other division is maybe playing a different course. But anyway, I thought they had 3, but maybe it's not the case. But yeah, and you'll get 2 very different styles even out there this weekend that Pinto and De La, don't really play at all like one another. What's your practice going to look like? What day is it? Tuesday? So you got Wednesday and Thursday. Are you going to take on one course at a time, one day at a time, or what's kind of your practice for the next couple days?
Yeah, so I don't want to overdo myself, so I'm probably just going to do 1 round at De La, 1 round at Pinto, and call it good.
Okay. And then I guess going back to when you're talking about traveling and before when you said Rob and Chandler, you're talking about Chandler Kramer and Robert Burridge, right? Are you in a position where you're doing like the Airbnb styles? Are you camping? Like, what's kind of the game plan for how you're touring? Because everybody has what feels like a very different solution from person to person these days.
Yeah, so last weekend I stayed in a hotel, and this weekend I'm staying in an Airbnb.
Okay.
I don't know about next weekend yet. I just when I get there, I'll know.
Okay. So taking it as you go, which is certainly very understandable, and I think the lessons that you know whether it's a journal or just literally receipts or pictures, like the stuff you'll pick up this year becomes so valuable, for the subsequent years. Just those are building blocks of like, okay, when we're in this city, we always want to do this, or when we're in that city, let's not do that again. One example I'll say is this last weekend, one of the Disc Golf Pro Tour media staff was saying, yeah, we normally do the RV at the RV park, but we were a little hesitant due to the possibilities of tornadoes and thunderstorms and everything else. So we opted for a hotel. And like, you just kind of pick those things up as you go, and you know.
Well, I think about a few weeks ago in Houston, I was watching Evelina Salonin's Instagram, and she was kind of driving up to where their Airbnb was. I don't think I would stay there. It looked like they maybe found an inexpensive one, and it wasn't necessarily in the nicest parts of town. Oh. And I just think like, wow, those are things that you just don't know that you need to learn because when you're looking for an Airbnb in Houston, for instance, you just think, oh, I'll find one near one of the courses, and you maybe don't know the layout of the land. So yeah, it's quite an adventure your first year on tour.
Yeah, I want to say it was Waco, maybe, that we got an Airbnb, and man, it was terrible. The shower was broken whenever I tried to use it, so we ended up having to like call the woman, and she gave us another Airbnb to stay in for the rest of the week, and it ended up being okay, but it was very sketchy. So yeah, it's definitely like a iffy situation, but there is a van to come, hopefully very soon. It's in the works right now. So
awesome.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I'm sure is a whole nother. I mean, and we've seen so many of our players take on to that van life, or go from car to minivan, or minivan to regular van, or everything in between, and that's just another gigantic leap. But you've got to schedule and coordinate and plan around that. I think of Paige Pierce this last weekend. Basically ripping the fan out, the one that's been leaking, ripping it out of her van and trying to recaulk it for like the 3rd or 4th time because it's leaking on her while she's sleeping. Like those are all, obviously that's kind of the downside, but those are all some of the things that come as part of your van life. What would you say is a bucket list or goal item of yours to do or see that's off the course this year, knowing you're going to see a lot more of the country than you probably have seen in the past? What jumps out at you as something that you care to take in this year?
So on my Instagram, I tend to post a lot of like pretty views and stuff, of like forests, like rainy little places, really pretty green nature. And so I'm just excited to see all the nature, especially going to Oregon. I am very excited to go to Oregon. So I think that will be the main one.
Do you can then in that kind of setting and style, is it hiking and taking pictures? Is it camping? Is it waterfall seeking or swimming holes? Like what are some of the things about nature that you anything in particular that you seek out? Agate hunting, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I would say definitely the waterfalls, the swimming, hiking, all of that kind of is what I'm looking for.
You're going to love Beaver State Fling.
Yeah.
That's sure. That course is everybody. It's renowned for the swimming and the camping and the preserve as well. Both of those are going to be
like Clackamas River, a little bit of
Yes.
canoeing, all that stuff. Just make sure you're good and safe with all of that. I think that's probably one of the things you'll also learn just in general is that fine balance of, the fun extracurricular stuff of living life and enjoying nature and being outside and hiking and swimming and all these crazy things, and then balancing that with like, hey, I got to still be careful because I got to go throw some Frisbees, on the weekend.
Yeah.
So that's my fatherly advice for you.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So the event closed out and there was obviously, I would say, unfortunately, one of the biggest conversations of the weekend, besides your incredible play, turned out to be your last hole of play, the 54th hole of competition, hole number 18.
Yes.
And
yes.
Well, rather, I'll react. How about you give your experience for how hole 18 played out and like what was involved with that?
Okay. So walking up to the tee box, it started to rain a little more. I had been dealing with the slippery tee boxes as it was everybody else. So going into it, I was a little bit, I wasn't throwing as comfortably as normal with the slippery tee box and was more focused on not falling than executing my shot properly. As soon as I released the shot, I knew that it wasn't great and that it had a potential to go OB, and I was pretty frustrated. I'm not really sure what they showed of my reaction, but I put my hands on my knees and kind of put my head down. And we didn't get a green or red flag yet, and so we were like, okay, let's just go up there and see what's going on. As we walk up there, everybody's like, oh wow, that's very close. I look at it, I saw it touching green grass. I tried to fight that it was in. Unfortunately, my card mates decided that it was not in, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I then from there just tried to see how far it was to the green, and I clocked it at 355 right over the water. I wasn't really comfortable with throwing that. My caddy, Rob, told me that I should probably just lay up and take a bogey. So I did, and I got a podium finish. So I ended with an unfortunate bogey, but like I said, it is what it is. It wasn't my decision, and the card did what they thought was correct, and that's okay.
What is your distance about when you throw?
Honestly, I don't know. I surprise myself sometimes. I'm like, oh wow, that went pretty far. I think I could have thrown it 355 and I would have been fine. But with the conditions, the weather, the slipperiness, the wet disc, sticky hands, all of that, I just wasn't really wanting to push it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And that was going to be my next question. Knowing that you were one stroke out of the possible, what eventually ended up being a playoff, we didn't know when that happened to you. Hindsight being 2020, looking back now, would you go for it, thinking maybe I could get in? If seeing as how if you don't, it drops you probably down to 7th place, because then you're going to miss you're probably going to gain at least 2 strokes there, and then drop out of you'll go from 3rd to, we'll say, 7th. Would you take that risk for the opportunity to get into that playoff, or are you just kind of content with 3rd right now?
I think I made the correct decision.
Okay.
I think that not pushing it and making the smart decision was the right thing to do.
And just to clarify, 355 is what you clocked it to the pin or to the short side of the green, or just to clear the water. Was it 355 to the pin?
It was just to clear the water. 355.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's you have to throw an accurate shot to a slope that gets at least 355 with all the things that you were considered.
With a little bit of weather happening.
Yeah, I don't. I guess I don't second guess that at all.
No, not at all.
And not that I did even then either, but I definitely don't when you say 355 just to the edge of the water.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it out there for the sake of putting it out there that you had thrown. This is my perspective. You had thrown. Then I waited for the rest of your group to throw, and I don't know if I was 20 or 30 feet away from it. I was maybe even 40 or 50 feet away from it. And you had thrown, and I knew it was getting close to the OB line, and I think it was an X that they put up, meaning they weren't sure if it was in or out of bounds. At that point, I personally, after all four of your card mates had thrown, I walked up to your desk, and I stood over the top of it. And I think that's when I messaged our producer, who has no official standing of anything either. I messaged to him. I said, it's going to be really close, but I think that's out. And then I stepped back and I waited for all of you guys to get up there. And I don't know if I was watching the next group on the green or whatever. And then once I realized that the card was going to have, or was having a discussion, understandably, then I moved from that spot back up to where you guys were. And that's right when I walked in, I think is when I heard maybe Rebecca say, I hope I'm right in saying this, something along the lines of, I just don't see it, that I could call that in, that looks out, or something, paraphrasing, something of that nature. And then obviously I could see disappointment on your face and probably some frustration, or probably a whole mix of emotions I can't even guess on your behalf, but probably something along those lines. And then it played out. One of the reasons why this is such a topic is, I believe, is because the angles in which people watched and saw where it was or wasn't, there's a lot, and I mean thousands, a lot of people loudly screaming that it was obviously in, and that, like, as if there was no doubt or no question, and then some pulling out the wrong rule about benefit of the doubt and whatever. But a lot of people screaming that. Would you depict it as saying it was far tougher a decision than maybe even the internet thinks it was? Would that be a fair assessment? Like, let me rephrase that. When you walked up, were you like, "Oh, that's obviously in"? Did that thought cross your mind?
No, I definitely looked at it for at least a few seconds before I was like, okay, I see a piece of green grass that it is touching inbounds. And I tried to point it out to my card mates, and whether they looked at it or not, I'm not too sure. I don't know if they, saw what I was seeing. Maybe I just wanted it to look that way, but I was pretty positive that it was in. But they didn't think so, so
sure,
it's okay.
Yeah, and I think that, unfortunately, then the internet immediately also wants to take it like an extra step and start throwing a lot of projections in there of, were they trying to bully you, or somebody had something to gain from it, or if you were on a different card with different people, could it have gone differently? Obviously, anything's possible. For me, though, I guess I was just wondering is if you felt if it was just the 3-1 vote, and if that was fairly arrived at, or if that's just part of the rules, or maybe even the better question is, how would you like to see that situation handled moving forward? If it was identical for someone else next time, how does that situation not become as controversial?
Honestly, I think that everybody on the card said what they thought was correct, and that's the rules, and there's nothing that I could do about it. There's nothing that anybody on the internet could do about it either, even now. I've been reading a lot of the comments as well, and I've seen some that were defending me, some that weren't. So honestly, it was just a really tough call, and it could have gone either way. And I think, yeah, depending on card mates, it could have gone inbounds, because you see online, there's so many people that think it was in, and there's so many people that think it was out. So I do believe that different card mates, it could have been in. But that was not the case. I had the card mates that I had, which was a great card. But it didn't go my way, and that's okay.
First of all, I think that's incredibly mature, and I feel like a great way to describe it. At every stage within disc golf, we're always with the group or even an official. Even an official is always going to have some ounce of judgment and non-perfection that can come into play on any call at any part on any course, right? I mean, there's, I see people talking about string and a million other things. There's always going to be like a pair of eyes that are watching, whether they're yours and your card mates or it's an official standing there. There's always going to be that possibility. And it sounds like you've handled it and accepted it in a very mature way. And all I'll say to kind of wrap it up is, I personally, because I've been asked this myself from others, I personally, of course, have no, so to speak, dog in the fight. And from my eye, when I took a quick look at it, from standing right over the top of it, I initially just thought it was out of bounds. That's what it looked like to me. Now, I didn't dissect it for the next 30 seconds or 2 minutes or anything and have a conversation with anyone.
You had other things going on.
But that's what I saw. And I clearly would never wish ill on anyone to not be in bounds for any single shot or situation, but that's how I called it and that's how I saw it. I also, thank goodness, It doesn't matter what I thought. I mean, nobody cares what I think because I have no bearing on your play in that realm whatsoever. But I do overall. I just think you've handled it very well, and I think that speaks probably even more for your competitive / character than anything, is that there wasn't a tantrum, there wasn't cussing out, there wasn't anything of that nature whatsoever. And yes, it sucked that you it didn't go your way, so to speak, but I think how you handled it speaks more than maybe anything else could have. So I certainly commend you on that. And even if I did think you were out of bounds, it wasn't personal. It doesn't matter if you think. That's completely fine.
Yeah. Honestly, there's no need for any mean comments coming from me about the situation.
Sure.
It should have been a better shot. That's honestly what I think, is I should have thrown a better shot. And had I thrown a better shot, it would have been completely fine. This would have been avoided. So
yeah, and
it's on me.
And that's a great way to look at it. And just like I've said, literally as long as I've been watching any sports, we always put so much emphasis on the final hole or the final 2 holes, the final play, the Hail Mary shot, throw at the end of a football, whatever, the missed field goal to lose the Super Bowl. It's like, yeah, you should have just been up by 10, going into the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's, again, a very mature way to look at it is, if things would have gone better at any other point, we wouldn't be having such a controversial, conversation there. So I can appreciate that as well. Well, hopefully you carry that, and I think the rest of the card will carry that on as it's not like there should be any harbor, feelings pent up or anything of that nature. So I certainly appreciate that. From here, what would you say? I know you talked about maybe the things you do or you want to work on, but what would you say is the biggest lesson that you took away from this weekend's experience? Just overall, and I don't mean anything with that particular play or call or throw, just in general.
Yeah. Honestly, just to enjoy it. I enjoyed it so much. I think there's a lot of times that I've played tournaments and not enjoyed it and just been way too competitive. Competitive is a good thing, but I think I've been too competitive in the past. And this one, I was just enough competitive and also enjoying myself and having a great time and learning things in the process. So I think that would be the lesson that I took from it.
Which is, again, sounds mature and insightful. How much of a help, and I don't know if it's a scale 1 to 10 or if you can even possibly quantify this, but how much of a help is it to have someone as skilled and knowledgeable as Robert Burridge on the bag? How much of a help was he this weekend?
He was a great help. He helped me make some smart decisions, including laying up after that OB on hole 18. there is an upshot, 13 or 14, the long par 5.
Yep, 14. Yep.
The Firebird upshot that I did that they posted about,
Mm-hmm.
that one was his call. That Firebird upshot was his call. So there's been, and there was more, of course, but those are the ones that I can think of in my brain that he helped me make a decision on, and so helpful. Obviously, he knows tour golf. He knows to play smarter rather than more aggressive, depending on the situation, and it was a big help, and I'm so thankful that he was there, given the fact that he had technically only 10 minutes to get to his tee time once we were finished, because he's got that you have to be there 5 minutes prior. And yeah, I'm just so thankful that he was there.
A heck of an assistant there. And I guess you already answered what would have been the next question, which is talking about, some players have a caddy or support person that literally might just be there to, talk music or play games and make jokes with. And then some players have actual, involvement. I think of a Tom and a Missy, clearly, like they're talking out what feels like every shot to some degree about literally what disc and angles. And it sounds like Robert kind of fits that category more so of like actively talking about shot selection and throwing, right?
Yes. So most of the time, I would say about 70% of the time, I would grab a disc that I would immediately think of it, grab a disc, and I would ask him, do you think I'm making the right decision? And a lot of the times he would say yes, or he would give his opinion on what he thinks I should do. And I don't always take his opinion. I go with what feels right. But then there are times that I'm questioning even what I think, and that is when I will use what he says and be like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to trust it. I'm going to throw it confidently. And that's what we did, and it worked great.
Yeah, which is great. I love hearing that when, there's a lot of different ways in which that person can be your support, and I love how you just explained it. Where did that whole relationship start with him, being on your bag, you providing him with that much trust or entrusting him that much? How did that, come about?
So, I met Robin Chandler at the Crush on the Con show in March, at the beginning of March.
Okay.
And since then, so Raise Energy, my sponsor, also picked them two up. And so we've all kind of been friendly, talkative, all of that. Just recently, me and Rob have started talking more, being more friendly. And that was actually the first time that he has caddied for me. And so it's all pretty new, but we just have been hanging out together a lot. We've been doing fun stuff outside of disc golf, like going and playing pool, doing escape rooms, all of that fun stuff.
Everybody does escape rooms on tour. It feels like it's like that's every group I feel like is doing an escape room.
No, obviously a good time to get out. With the success that you had this weekend, is this immediately like an assumed thing? Like, hey, Robert, what do you?
When's your tea time?
Yeah, when's your tea time? And do you think you can rely on him a little bit more to be on the bag here moving forward?
I believe so, and I hope
Nice.
So. We haven't really talked about it, but I think so. And it's also, it goes the other way too. I would be on his bag.
Okay.
But I don't really give my opinion on his shots because he tends to know what he's doing a little better than I do. But I will say the last round, whenever I went to caddy for him, I did give him a my opinion on what he should do on hole 17, and he threw a phenomenal shot, and I took all the credit for it because it was great.
Sounds right,
as you should. And honestly, the more you practice with him, the more you caddy for him, the more you'll learn his game and maybe realize his shortcomings and his strengths that you can maybe help influence those type of shots. Whether he should be aggressive or maybe more conservative.
Yeah. I would say I'm more there to help with his mental game. Trying to keep him more smiley and having a good time, laughing off the bad shots that happen. And there's one thing that he had told me to do, which was to remind him about his offhand whenever he's putting. And so anytime that his putt looks a little off, I just give him a little reminder, hey, remember to do this. And that's pretty much what I'm there for.
So to follow that up, maybe this is a little bit of a reach, maybe not, but I think of Robert's insight where he was, thrust into this playoff with Simon Lizotte a couple of years ago, or shot himself into this playoff. And at that time, he was a little bit less of a known commodity. I mean, nobody had, as great of a guy as he is and was and is, nobody necessarily was like, oh yeah, I think Robert Burridge is going to push this, the Des Moines Challenge into a playoff this weekend. I don't think he'd be insulted by, me saying that. But all of a sudden he's there in the spotlight. He ultimately has this incredible playoff where he comes up just short to Simon. Fair or not, I see a little similarity in that sense that you show up, you've played in a few events, and then you show up and here you are finishing on the podium. And everybody has to take note of what you've done and your accomplishment. Am I crazy for drawing a similarity there?
No, we actually talked about that as well. He has been like, I know how it is. I know how you feel because this happened. And I don't know the entire situation with the playoff. I don't know the whole story about it, but he's kind of talked about it here and there. So, yeah, I think it's really cool that you bring that up because we actually did talk about that.
Good. I feel like the stories are in a sense similar in that just like instant stardom of like, hey, everyone has to take note because you just had this incredible performance. We know that there's no way that's a fluke that you finish in the top 3 at the Dynamic Disc Open, and we're just, one stroke out of the playoff, so to speak. So, yeah, it's very cool. That's funny. Well, good for you that someday you may get to go, you may have the pleasure of going back and seeing how that all went down on his side, and he could probably break down everything he was thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
It was an incredible playoff. Hole 2's putt.
The huge buddy hit, and then,
oh my gosh.
And then the unfortunate stump that he ended up hitting.
Stump gate,
we don't want to spoil it for you.
So much good stuff. Emily, is there anything that we didn't bring up or that we didn't uncover? Any rock we left unturned, so to speak, of things you'd like to share, discuss, talk about, put out there? Anything else that obvious that we should have mentioned here tonight?
I don't think so. I think we've covered pretty much everything.
All right.
We try not to be too intrusive, but people need to get to know you even better, especially if you're going to be under the spotlight. I guess maybe that's the follow-up there, though, is how do you feel about the spotlight? How do you feel about extra attention and the pressure that it may or may not bring?
I love it. I love all the pressure. I keep saying, I feel like I belong here. And so it feels good to finally make it because this is what I've wanted. And I finally feel like I've got my foot in the door and I'm ready to just start running.
What would you consider a success moving forward? And I'll qualify that by saying we've seen men and women kind of have a breakout performance, but then it's the follow-up. I mean, even Andrew Presnell, says he didn't have the major hangover. He won the major and was even maybe a little nervous how he'd perform this weekend, which happened to turn out great for him. But what do you need to do to kind of feel like you're maintaining being in the right space?
Honestly, the main thing that comes to mind is just top 10s. Okay. If I can get top 10s, I'll feel really good about it. Obviously, I want to be up there in podiums, and I hope that that's the case, but I don't want my expectations to be too high, especially with playing all these courses blind, while a lot of these touring pros have played these for years. I don't have super high expectations, but I know that I can at least be in the top 10, and I should be with where my game is at and how I'm feeling.
Yeah, and pardon my memory, but I feel like we may have even asked the same question of Robert back then, and he was in a similar position of, hey, I'm new on the tour. I've got all these courses to learn, where some of these guys, I mean, some of these people have been playing De La literally for 25 or 30 years this upcoming weekend. But, you know, some of these people have been on tour for full time for 8 or 10 years, and you got to catch up even just to the ins and outs of each course. So it's a taller task.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
I know we talked a little bit about sponsors, but please, for the world to know how they can support you and how they can go out and support your sponsors, list off any and all sponsors that you wish to list, and then list any ways that people could either follow or support you, and any kind of socials that you maybe put out there for the world to see.
Yeah, so my sponsors are Raise Energy Abilene. That's kind of a more in-person thing.
Mm-hmm.
To buy drinks off of me, buy drinks from them whenever they're vending at tournaments, which we do hit up quite a few of the DGPT events. I'm sure a lot of people have seen our stand. I know we've been doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Big Country Beef Jerky, I know that's kind of getting out there. A lot of people know about that. Groundbound, Good Dog Disc Golf. I'm on their team. I have my own groundbounds. So that's also a me thing. Just come to me about it. I have some discs with my stamps on them that I sell at tournaments. Normally like block parties, fly marts, all that.
Okay.
So, and I'm just about to partner with Drive Bags. So there's going to be those coming as well. So that's exciting. And then I'm also going to give a shout out to Tumbleweed 20 back home. So, yeah.
Awesome. And so any social media that you keep up on, or that you're working on, or you might have a team work on, anything there, or not necessarily?
So my Instagram is just Emily.Weatherman, and my Facebook's Emily Weatherman. That's about all I've got at the moment. I'm hopefully going to start up YouTube again. We'll see. I said it back then and I haven't done it, so I've been very busy.
Understandably.
YouTube's a big commitment.
It certainly is. There's no doubt about that. So awesome. Well, Emily, all of the congratulations and accolades we could possibly throw at you are so well deserved, and obviously we wish you the best. I know I spoke to you immediately after the tournament just for a moment, but super happy for you and the success that you had this weekend, and everything that's to follow. I mean, you have a new heightened sense probably of expectations, and the world, I know, is going to be excited to see what you can do with it. And we wish you nothing but the best here throughout the year. And hopefully we've got more reasons, even additional reasons, to interview and talk to you as you have all these new experiences and find some more successes later on this year. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you had a long day of travel all the way across the country. And of course, we wish you the best out there in California and on your West Coast swing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I enjoyed this so much.
Good.
Thanks a lot.
We love it. We appreciate you being here. All right, Emily, have a good night. Have a good weekend. And we'll encourage everyone to go out and follow you on the Instagrams and do everything they can to support you, as you just called off. And if you ever have any other news or exciting things going on or anything else you want to share, you're welcome here anytime. We'll take you. We appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you. Y'all have a great night.
See ya.
Thanks,
have a good night.
Thanks.
Goodbye. Emily Weatherman, getting it done.
Yeah. Third place at the age of 18.
Yeah, and just overall, think about, and I know someone kind of referenced it in the chat, but she is obviously one of our next rising stars. Mm-hmm. And to see her start or get really fully embodied in this tour life, and to know that this is the start for her, like, put it on your calendar, whether it's in 2 or 5 or 10 years, and seeing future successes and things from her. With the way you watch her drive And then the way in which we saw how she can putt as well this weekend, just so impressive. And then the poise, some confidence,
I think
calmness, like she really
combine that
displays
with
all of it.
Being able to learn from her touring partners, Chandler and Robert. Like, they've been on the road. They know what it takes, to be in that spotlight. Chandler Kramer had the same thing happen to him.
Yeah.
Where he popped up and suddenly he was the big thing for a while. I just think she has nowhere to go but up.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I'm excited for the next few years to see how well she continues to play. And I don't think we need a weatherman to know that it's like thundering and lightning outside. It's storming. I don't know if you guys can hear it through the microphones or not, but
wait, is that a Stormy Daniels reference too? Are you tying all of
not.
pop culture and references together?
I hope it doesn't get Haley King out there because your car's out there, Terry.
It did hail on me today. Speaking of which, and I've asked legit, I've asked a few people this. At one point I was in my office and I heard, some thunder and some other things going on. And then I saw a little bolt of lightning, whatever. So it's going to be stormy today. No big deal. And then just bam, bam. Like, I'll show you, like some legitimate almost marble sized, like small marbles. Like,
sure.
Enough where I was worried about my car. Like, my car's parked outside and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to be making a hail claim?
Well, I sure hope not, Terry.
No, and it doesn't appear that they did. But yeah, I went out to my car because those hail pellets were coming down. Yeah, so, and it sounds like I was in a pretty isolated area because everyone I talked to, it's like, no, that didn't hit here.
No, we didn't get any hail. We had a bunch of rain. Let's continue to talk about FPO, though. Now that we got our interview with Emily taken care of. Winning this event, Missy Gannon wins in a playoff over Haley King, which we'll talk about the playoff situation in just a little bit, but they tied at 5 under par for the round. This was also a combined, or what's the term? Aggregate playoff. Thank you, Terry. I couldn't draw that one out. So anyway, Missy Gannon and Haley King at 5 under. 4 under, our guest tonight, Emily Weatherman. In 4th place, there was a 3-way tie at 3 under between Natalie Ryan, Holland Hanley, and Lisa Fakis. In 7th place, Kat Murch at +1. 8th place, a name that probably I didn't really know, Emma Arp. Mm-hmm. Right underneath that is Emily Beach. Apparently my eyes don't work very well. So Emma Arp, followed up by Emily Beach, and then Ellie Ezra Midling in 9th place, tied with Owen Scoggins, Rebecca Cox. Wow. Emma, Emily, Ellie Ezra. That was a little tough for me. But ultimately, Terry, do you know anything about Emma Arp?
I can't say that I know her too well. She's out of Nebraska, and I don't think that we've seen her at a ton of events. And
she shot a 964 rated round, which is 57 points higher than her average. I'm sorry, not round, event average, which is 57 points above her player rating. So amazing. That's just phenomenal.
What can you, when you pull her up, and maybe we should have just had her on tonight. What do you see out of her? Had her on as well. What do you see out of her history, so to speak? She looks like she's a COVID player.
Yeah, she's been playing for about 5 years, since 2020,
or at least a PDGA member.
That
we know of.
Yeah, playing those events. Like I said, she's currently rated 907 out of Nebraska. Looks like she played the Open at Austin, took 45th. She's won a bunch of events, smaller B tiers, 2024 Bigfoot, second annual Future Legend, the Mocan Battle, Spring Fever Fling, and the St. Charles Open presented by Smokin' Aces. Which was an A tier. She won an A tier this year. A pretty solid resume.
Mm-hmm.
Took 58th at U.S. Women. So it sounds like as of right now, she's a pretty solid regional player that is maybe starting to dip her toes into the professional scene, so to speak, the pro tour. Ultimately,
and what else is she signed up for?
She is currently signed up to play the 46th annual Norman Pro-Am, supported by Innova.
This weekend.
46th annual. Wow.
It's been a minute over there
in Norman,
Oklahoma.
She's also scheduled to play the 2024 Star City Classic. When the tour comes back over to Des Moines, she'll be playing that, and then she's playing in a Q Series. So it looks like either she's playing the Kansas City Wide Open just to play it, or the Q Series maybe to try and earn a tour card. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Good for. She's got 54 career wins already. Wow. I'm trying to look at when she started playing Open. She played Open all of last year, quite a bit, as well as a little MA3. She go from MA3 to Open?
MA3. I think it was just a matter of probably there was no one else to play against.
No FA
or FPO
players.
So just playing MA3.
Yeah, she's been playing Open for a while.
FPO all the way back to 2021 at least.
Yeah, 2021 it looks like is when she started.
Yeah, she very quickly moved up the ranks.
So good for her. Awesome. Another new name out there on tour. It's good to see. So hopefully we can see some possible future from her. Well, let's talk a little bit about the playoff between Missy and Haley. Ultimately, hole 18, Haley had the opportunity to win. It looked like she was all lined up for it. All she had to do was throw about a 250-foot shot over some water, of which Haley has all day long, and she misjudged it and fluffed it. Comes up short to go into the water, and from there gets to move up to the water, throws it pretty much under the basket. It's able to tap in, and then we're going to a playoff, Terry. The playoff goes to hole 16 first, which, as we all know, is the island hole. Haley throws a beautiful shot, puts it 20 feet out from the pin, maybe 25. It was a little hard to tell from the angle. But Missy skips off the water to get to the island, of which I don't think she made the island the other 3 rounds.
No, she had struggled mightily.
And she has that distance, so I don't know what her...
to be fair, everyone missed the damn island this weekend. MPO and FPO doesn't matter.
I agree.
I don't know what kind of crazy vortex or hole.
What did EMAC do to that island?
There is nothing different this year from last year, and I don't have any stats to back this up. It just seemed like this year so many more people were struggling on 16 more than ever.
Well, we could probably,
it was wild.
We could probably call Statmando or PDJ Stats and look at the OB strokes on 16 this year versus last year, which would give you a pretty close estimate as to if there was a higher percentage. It did seem like what we saw in coverage, at least, everybody was missing. So there's that.
It was wild.
So Missy Gannon skips up onto the island. It's far left. She looks like she's got about a 40-footer looking at the water, and I was sitting there in Culver's watching it. We had just ordered, our buddy Steve Held and I were kind of sitting there, and we're watching it, and I'm just like, yeah, this is an aggregate. She's got 3 holes. She's going to lay this up. Like, that's the smartest move. Why would you putt at that water and more or less blow your opportunity to win? Because if she misses that, she's going OB again, and at that point, or going OB for the first time, not again. She skipped into it, and probably
she's probably losing 1 stroke if she goes OB.
At least, yeah. I mean, more than likely 1.
You go OB after being on, though. I mean, you're going to get a 4.
Correct.
All right.
So then she's down by 2. She'd be down by 2 strokes with 2 holes to go. Not an ideal situation.
Well, that's assuming Haley makes hers.
Which Haley was close enough where I didn't think like Haley was going to miss it. But Missy Gannon throws up this putt, catches high left chain, hyzering and teeters for a split second on the cage and falls in. I love Missy, but in no world should that putt have stuck. I mean, I watched some good putts not stick, and I've seen some bad putts. You know, that putt probably should not have stuck, but it did. It got the benefit. It fell in. Congratulations. It was a clutch. It was awesome to see that go in. Haley matches it with a 2. Missy comes up to hole 17, gets a par 3. Haley goes OB right off the drive. At that point now, Haley's fighting from behind, and we get to hole 18, and it doesn't really matter at that point. I mean, things could happen, but the way when Missy drove, there was no question about it. Missy needed to go out of bounds there, and they both ended up taking 4s, and Missy walks away with technically a 2-stroke playoff victory, which you don't see very often.
No.
Maybe one of the first. Unless
No, I mean you could see it in theory. Somebody taps out from long range, or whatever, or throws one in. But you're right. Yes. So congratulations, of course, to Missy. Back-to-back years for Haley King going into a playoff. Mm-hmm. Equally is crazy and significant is that's Missy's first ever, I think, career playoff. Not just Elite Series or major playoff, but if I overheard correctly, that may have been her first ever playoff. Which, with as much golf as she plays, I think you'd be surprised by hearing that. But that's what I thought I heard.
I'm surprised.
Directly or indirectly. There was also a quick conversation that, again, I wasn't near the green for the playoff, or for any of the playoff. However, someone had also said that Haley on 18, Haley and or Missy didn't realize it was aggregate, or maybe didn't realize that they were tied. First, I heard they didn't realize they were even going to be tied, and then there was even a distinction made as to that it was an aggregate playoff, which, in their defense, I can understand because we haven't seen aggregate playoffs implemented. Yeah. So the fact that it was happening here this weekend certainly was a change. So I can understand that, like, slipping past the players.
Sure.
Let's be real. Not every player's on
concerned
Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday thinking, man, if I'm in a playoff, okay, it's aggregate this week. Like, nobody's thinking like that probably anyway, or concerning themselves with it at that point. No. So I can understand all of that. It poses the bigger question, though. Do we like or dislike the implementation of aggregate playoffs?
Like it.
When?
Every Pro Tour and hopefully Worlds.
Don't like it. Okay, that's where you're wrong. So, here are lots of things, some of which will be new that I'm sure you guys will spit out and share with us.
Okay.
Some of which won't be.
I'm interested to hear your take, Terry. Why you dislike it.
Right off the bat, look. And Coles is a massive, maybe not a massive. He's an anomaly because he ended up walking off. In that sense, it was unique. But for starters, when you're taking the FPO division, this is just one consideration. You're taking the FPO division, putting them into a playoff where they're for sure playing 3 holes, and you're going into the middle of the MPO round. We'll just say that isn't ideal.
Right. It's not. That is very inconvenient for everybody involved. Inconvenient for the FPO because now they maybe have to wait for someone to finish up a hole, depending on the type of hole it is. You are holding up the MPO round. Now they have to sit and they get cold. Now, to be fair, hole 16 in the past has had waits that, maybe not 45 minutes, but it has been a hole where people have had to wait on.
Yeah, so things moved along pretty well.
But they did move along well this weekend.
Someone said on the board FPO can be slower. That's a possibility as well. But either way, they're interjected now into the bottom to middle of the MPO players and or in the mix.
Does it matter to you which holes the aggregate?
Well, and that's another interesting question is because you understand, everyone on the planet understands why they're going to 16 in general as a playoff hole.
Because if they're going to 6,
if they were going to 1, they still, and this has happened at other events, or just like at Jonesboro 2 years ago with Cat Merch along with Haley King. Haley's really got a playoff thing. Anyway,
she does.
They went over, in that case, the playoff specifically started on hole 10, and it ended on hole 10. Obviously, that's the middle of the round, the middle of the course, but it happens to be near where the starting point was in that given year, 2 years ago. So they went right to hole 10, and it only went one hole. Same thing, you're still interjecting. Now, even if these women were going to hole 1 to start the playoff, which is quote-unquote more traditional, they would have just been interjecting and
later in the cycle.
So,
but I don't think that's better. I would rather see them interject earlier or the players that are lower down on the course, so to speak. By going to 16,
it sounds like you're a bottom cardist. You don't care about the bottom cards of MPO.
I am a bottom cardist. You know why? No one cares about the bottom cards of MPO. Ask Cole Redallen if he cares about the bottom cards of MPO.
So that right there is unfortunately now this is obviously exclusive to the FPO side in that we saw how that played out. Now we'll talk a little more logistically. There's those things. Then there's just the overall additional 20 to 30 to 45 minutes that are almost guaranteed to ensue, which then shortens cameramen, shortens spotters, volunteers, help, blah, blah, blah. There's all these factors that there's with a lot of positions, obviously, at these big events, there's a turnover of sorts of people that are doing certain things in the morning and certain things in the afternoon, namely, selfishly, our camera crews and batteries and blah, blah, blah.
I've said this. Ace Run, you're on our board, and I love you to death. I don't care about the cameramen. And when it comes to a situation like this, or control room, or anybody that isn't a member on the course, because we are, as someone who would be stuck as a control room. Trust me, there was one year we called wins and losses in the control room as to whether they were playoffs. Like, we would jokingly be like, "Oh, is this going to be a losing event because we have a playoff?" Because we hate them. We hate playoffs because it eats into our lunchtime. It eats into our turnaround time. I get it, but we cannot be considered when it comes to these rules. Like, it just, I know that
there are certain constraints that are practical, though.
There are constraints, but ultimately, unless they're impossible to leap, that's how it works. You know, when it was very difficult at Ledgestone when they would make us bounce between two different courses. Our guys would drive from one course and get right to the other course just barely in the nick of time to start, with FPO and MPO. And ultimately, that was it doable? Yes. Should it have been done? Talk to the TD, but we have to be such an afterthought in the media. Just my opinion. Of course,
the play is paramount. However, the overall product and experience is what people are paying for too. There's a fine line between the players and then the overall entertainment value that people are getting by watching said players. Like, there's just has to be this fine balance. And I'm not claiming to know exactly where that line stands, but there is some massaging and some balance that has to take place there.
Yes, 100% agree. Like, it's unfortunate that we have to be considered, that we don't have infinite resources, but I get it. Does this bode more than for having final round cuts?
That's certainly a consideration. But before we even get to that additional comment, then, we saw that on the FPO side, it unfolded. And then for those who somehow may or may not have understood or know, they played the 3 holes. Even if you take a 9 on the first hole and a 9 on the second hole, you play the third hole. If somehow, though, the players are tied after playing 3 holes, the overall score of playing those 3 holes, you go back to, in this case, they would go back to 16, and that would start sudden death. That would be your quote-unquote traditional playoff scenario where sudden death would take over, but they would still continue to play those 3 holes if there was continuing to be pushes. So I just want to make it clear for everyone, in case somehow it wasn't, that that's how this went. Now, you fast forward into a lot of other events, or we maybe reflect on a lot of other events, and let's just say this happens on the FPO side. Then let's say it happens on the MPO side. On the MPO side, specifically, if we experience a lack of daylight or some kind of weather delay that then leads to ultimately a lack of daylight, use the best example of Austin.
Yeah, can that?
What if in Austin that Niklas doesn't make that putt, and they're forced into a 3-hole aggregate playoff?
I question whether that can be overridden by the TD at that point. Say, listen, guys, I know we had on the schedule an aggregate playoff for 3 holes, but due to time constraints, we are going to limit that to 1 hole. It is going to be a traditional playoff, so to speak, and go from there.
I'm just saying that's another very valid consideration for how many events that we see that ultimately have a delay at some point, and then the more you push back that delay. Or similarly, I mean, Waco, final day, weren't things almost even kind of pushing with a looming storm? Again, you add in a 1 or 2 hour delay on any given round, final day, given day, whatever, you know what I'm saying, given a final day round, that forced or mandated 3-hole aggregate playoff. Now, an aggregate playoff, I'm just going to go out on a limb. It could maybe be a 2-hole,
or
could it be 4-hole? Is there a magic number that we're only forever agreeing to? And
I don't know.
I'll claim ignorant to the PDGA any stipulation, but what if a TD said, you know what? There's 4 holes. They make a perfect loop right here. They're relatively easy. We have a 4-hole aggregate playoff. That's where it is.
I don't know.
Where are we going to draw that line?
I don't know that answer. But going back to your time issue, Stan Mann on the board says they've called ties before. Like if an event can't continue, whether that be from darkness or rain, we know that on say Sunday at 4:45, the thunderstorms roll in.
And they've done that.
Yeah, you call it and you say, guess what? We got a tie tonight, boys. Sorry. Split. Sorry, Nicholas, you have to split that hat with somebody. Just these are situations that we will figure out. And I'm sure we're going to run into problems.
But the problem is, and to cut you off, the problem is when we figure them out, it may be quote unquote too late because it's going to piss off and disappoint somebody.
There will,
right? It's going to piss off exactly half
100%
of the fans.
There's going to be problems
because there won't be
we've said it from the beginning of the year to guess what? DGN comes out with a new platform. We said there's going to be problems. There were problems. The stats going from UDisc to PDGA Live. Guys, set your expectations. There's going to be problems. Every change you implement, there is a chance for there to be problems. If you can imagine the scenario, it will probably happen at some point.
Now,
I didn't expect Waco to get called from a worldwide pandemic, Terry.
See, I saw that one coming.
I didn't. That wasn't on my bingo card.
I was in Thailand 2 months earlier. I knew it was coming for us. In fact, I brought some of it over.
I was going to say,
as I was accused
of.
And now I can absolutely flip over that coin.
Ace Run says playoffs have to be 6 or fewer holes according to PDGA.
He believes. Aggregate playoffs? Because the playoff obviously could go 20 holes given the time.
Yes, aggregate.
But what can a max aggregate be set at? That's a good question that I genuinely just don't know the answer to. Now, I'll go ahead and flip the coin over and 100% agree with the logic of, hey, we've played 54 or 72 or 90 holes, and the title that they're vying for comes down to one throw on one hole that may or may not seem more favorable to a righty versus a lefty. So do I understand them, and do I conceptually kind of like the idea? Yeah, I do. Not going to lie. Like I like the idea, and of my variation would be Worlds and Majors, which could still suffer all the problems I just discussed. Obviously, they could still fall fate to those things. Worlds and Majors is where I would like to see them implemented. If you want to make an argument for the already long Disc Golf Pro Tour playoff or 4+ events, 4 round, whatever. Don't even get me started there. But anyway, Worlds and Majors, I absolutely could get on board with this. A 3-round event.
I'm okay. I can totally buy that with you. I think right now we have the option between good and better. Good is a 1-hole playoff. That's good. I have no problem, on these 3-round events having a 1-hole playoff. Better is having the aggregate. If you can't get the aggregate or you don't want to implement the aggregate, I'm okay with that. I'm with you. I think it would be cool to have maybe a set standard, so to speak, that says maybe you're right, DGBT plus, DGBT playoff, and majors. I would be fine with that, to have the aggregate playoff stuff there. It's just different styles, different strokes for different folks, right?
Yeah. So it was interesting to see. Now, let's keep in mind there are considerations here as to when they can be implemented. Who can implement them? Does the Pro Tour have a say and or some standing in this?
The Pro Tour has some saying in everything.
But my point is, what you necessarily see at an elite or a major or a Pro Tour may or may not apply to you locally, or it might. These are all things that have to, I think, be taken into consideration. As you and I know, when so many of these things happen at a high level, at our event's highest level, whether it's an elite series or a major or whatever, I'll go all the way back to the rope of the USDGC. That clearly started
a trend
that got applied very accurately and very piss poorly for the next 20 years, and still to this day,
down to B tier, C tiers.
That's my point. So that's why I say let's tread cautiously.
Oh no, Terry,
with implementation here.
I want at the pickle
a deuce or die course.
Yep.
And we won't go to sudden death. We'll just have them
a 6-hole aggregate. That's what I want.
So they can both be 6 down after 6 holes. Yeah.
No, it's actually at the quarry this year.
Oh, that's true. That's another story.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. But ultimately, I think maybe this does play into maybe pushing for more cuts to help space out players.
That doesn't help the actual playoff scenarios. I mean, it helps not conflict in terms of the
MPO, FPO, correct.
But yeah, it doesn't answer the actual playoff itself because they're on the other end of the cut. But yeah,
I mean, a cut would help with a lot of these aspects. It would help with having daylight because you can push up tee times, so you're less worried about daylight running out, especially earlier in the season when we have less sunlight. It also helps maybe with the interrupting of the other events or the other division. You will still get that no matter what, because it's not like there is, it's not like the lead card or the last card of MPO waits until the FPO is done. They're going to tee off probably a half hour after the last card. There's still going to be some interruption, but I think the spacing will help out quite a bit, and that maybe you can squeeze them between, if the FPO have to wait on a hole because the MPO are finishing, not usually the case, but someone's probably going to get held up somewhere with something like that. Not ideal, but not horrible. That's what I have to say.
Well, I again, you kind of, in my opinion, you kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you say this only happens, the aggregate only happens at Elite Series or Majors, of which are 4 or 5 rounds, of which you're always cutting out. You're making a cut in the field,
and usually
for that final round anyway. Like we're taking like 2 or 3 potential problems and solving them all at once by having that consistent format, right? If it's 4 rounds, there's a cut after 3, and if you so choose, you can have an aggregate playoff. If there's 5 rounds, same thing applies. Blah 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 blah. This isn't that difficult. No. It actually kind of lines up perfectly if you think about it. So
sure.
Anyway, here, spoiler alert: we're gonna for sure see one more aggregate playoff on the Pro Tour this year.
MVP. Steve wants it. He's the one that pushed for it in the first place.
And
I did call it MVP. I'm proud of myself.
I would be okay as much as some of the most exciting golf on the planet starts with a sudden death playoff for Worlds. I would still be okay with it. I would love to see it actually implemented at Worlds. I think that is very appropriate. And I know people can say, is it the PGA Championship where if there's a tie after 18, they play a whole nother round on Sunday?
Next day. Let's make them play Sunday again. It's a glow round.
No,
I think you're right.
Yeah, whatever it is. Anyway,
we're going to talk now. We're going to move on from aggregate. We're going to talk everybody else's favorite subject, foot faults.
Ratings. Oh
no, that's we Brody is on the board. We talked about that last week.
But I've got
I got more to say. No, we're going to talk foot faults. The final playoff hole, Haley King is down by 2 strokes. Missy Gannon lines up, throws it over the island, or not over the water to the island green. Haley King calls her on a foot fault, pulls her aside, talks to the ref, the official, says, "Hey, looks like she stepped on her mini or her disc or whatever was down there." You could even see her hand saying it looked like it popped up.
Sure.
The official on the course, because there's only 2 of them on the card, there's not enough people to second it, so to speak, unless Missy had seconded it probably herself. The official, which I believe was Christine Jennings, which was there, more or less, dismissed it is the wrong word because that makes it feel like it was not taken in consideration, but more or less overruled the ruling and says, no, I didn't see it. I don't believe it happened. We're going to move on. I believe that's kind of how it went. Ultimately, it wouldn't, in theory, have mattered, but Haley did call her on it. And I know there's, unfortunately, bad blowback on this footfall call. We have such a funny discrepancy that we all want players to call other players on time violations and footfalls and jump putts and step putts and falling, but all these things. But then when a player does it,
oh, you're such a bad sport.
What a poor sport. You had no chance of winning. You're calling or hoping something happens. Like, no, that's not. I mean, in general, here's what I think. I think Haley did the right thing. I think Haley made what she thought was the right call. She should have called her if she felt like she stepped on the disc.
Mm-hmm.
And she should get no blowback from this. And I understand you're down by 2. Does it matter? No. But we want the rules are the rules, whether it's the first hole or the 57th or 58th hole, 59th hole, whatever hole number they were on.
57th, you had it right.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So
I agree with the idea of if we're going to get upset and frustrated and mad that our players aren't calling things that are seemingly so obvious, especially to the viewers at home, but they're not calling things. And then when they do, especially if it's, so to speak, obvious, we should always want to uphold the rules at all times. If it's egregious or obvious to Haley, as maybe it was, I personally didn't see any of it, but if it's egregious or obvious and she just simply wants to call it, I don't know why people would be so upset in thinking that it's poor sportsmanship or that it's BS or it's Bush League or whatever thing you want to attach to it. I just personally did, because we, like you just said, we can't have it both ways. You can't scream and argue and complain and yell at the TV and post on all your socials about how we're not correctly calling things and this is BS that this wasn't called. But then when something does get called, if called appropriately, is a problem. But that version is. And I understand the optics, but I don't know why. And here's what I think is maybe even more interesting, another layer to this story.
Ooh, layers.
Is the day before there were 3 foot faults called on the chase card. 3 in one group.
That's great.
It was great.
It feels like on FPO, you're saying?
Yes.
It feels like FPO is more prone to call others on faults than MPO is. You just never see that. Now, you could say maybe there's more happening on FPO and less on MPO, but I find that hard to believe.
Probably not.
They're all skilled athletes.
Yeah. During round 2 on the chase card on hole 9, the very difficult hole 9, I'll probably screw this up because it's just from memory, but it was, who did it first? Okay. Natalie Ryan foot faulted, and I believe it was Stacy Ronsley that called her, and I think Natalie said, "Oh, Ace runs on the board; he'll remember." Natalie foot faulted, and Stacy, I believe, called it, and then Natalie seconded or agreed. Said, "Yeah." I don't think it was the next throw, but it was within the next couple of throws. Stacy throws on her approach. She foot faults, and Natalie or somebody else on the card called it, and Stacy's like, "Yeah, foot faulted." They just happen to have very close together foot faults within a very short proximity of time.
Ace Run says it was Natalie, then Stacy, and then Natalie again on 18.
And then, so that all happened on 9.
Get your footwork together, ladies.
The vibe was great. It was so, in my opinion, from what I saw of it, it was so matter of fact. I foot faulted. You saw that and called it. I agree. We move on. That's how it was handled in both of those scenarios. Then you fast forward 9 holes later, and I'm standing there waiting for them to throw onto the island. And I'm standing back just a little bit, but all of a sudden, I'm standing actually really close to the water's edge. I see Natalie throwing, and Natalie goes down, wipes out after her throw.
Probably steps on her disc maybe and slips her on
knows?
her mini.
I don't know exactly how it happened, but apparently. But then as I look over after I see that, I see Natalie giving a Knuckles to Stacy, And only a minute later did I find out Stacy had called her, I think, again on the foot fault. And Natalie was good with it because Natalie foot faulted.
What was the weather like?
It was fine.
Okay. I didn't know if that was like
No.
rainy or
No,
like
it was-
where I could understand someone slipping.
No,
and
if I recall, it was perfectly fine at that time.
Okay. Yeah. They seconded themselves. And I mean, it's great. Honestly, it's I love to see it.
And that's an instant stroke.
Exactly.
Like,
and that's why I
even
said that,
wild,
like,
but-
ultimately, even if the foot fault happened, if you know, and again, I only watched it on the live replay, so it was tough to see. I'd have to go back and watch it on the Jomez where they've got, you know, you're able to see with higher camera. It looked to me like Missy threw the disc, her foot came through and maybe hit the mini or disc as it came through, bang, bang. I could understand how maybe if you saw that, it looked like she stepped down there, it came up. I don't question Haley on that in the slightest. But even if it was called, it makes no difference. Missy parked that. She had a drop in.
Sure. But that's not to say she shouldn't have called it if that's what she felt happened.
Correct. 100%. What I'm saying is that it would not, even with the one stroke, Missy drops it in the bucket, wins only by one stroke then instead. It's not like she would have had to rethrow. It's not like, you know, she was trying to, in previous years, you would have got, I believe you would have got a warning first.
One warning first.
And then we would have gone to a
stroke,
rethrow
and you have
after
to
that.
rethrow.
Correct. But now that's not the case. Now it's just an immediate stroke if it's seconded and you keep the throw. So I don't know if Haley knew what the score was. I don't think it mattered to Haley. She wasn't trying to like work anybody from what I could tell. Because if she was, she did a piss poor job at it. And it's not it just doesn't feel like a Haley. She doesn't have a reputation for this. It doesn't feel like it's anything she's done in the past. I'm good with what Haley did, and I think she made what she thought was the right call, and Christine Jennings made what she thought was the right call. Missy took it like, okay, yeah, no, I'm good, whatever. There didn't seem like there was any animosity after Haley tapped in, or after Missy tapped in. Haley came over and, you know, congratulated her. Didn't seem like any bad blood, but again, in the internet world, you know, there are people who are calling Missy a cheater. People are calling Haley poor sport, and all these other things. Poor sport. I keep thinking like sport. Poor sport. It's so difficult because this, as we've said for years, the camera, it lies. It literally lies. There are things that you think you see that you don't. We were talking obviously with Emily earlier. Camera angles, camera distances. There are so many times when I'm looking at the camera shots of two cameras, one pointed towards the player and one pointed to the side of the player. And I will specifically take the one that's pointed to the side of the player a lot of times because I think it shows the distance better. It's so tricky when the basket is in front and you see the player and it looks like, it's like a 15-footer. When you get to the side, you're like, holy crap, that's like 35 feet. It's such a different, those camera lenses, they lie, and I blame Ace Run for it.
I as well.
I mean,
you see how much weight they add to me when I'm out there?
I do.
Yeah, it's like
that's a special
I'm
lens
a full
filter.
100 pounds less than you guys see on camera. I swear.
So that's my take on the whole Haley King, Missy Gannon.
Well, to wrap that up, I'll say I don't feel like anyone in the field was, from what I saw, was being catty or was being manipulative or being unsportsmanlike. In fact, I saw quite the opposite, and there happened to be some calls this weekend, and I, for one, love that they're called, and from everything I could tell, everything seemed copacetic after that, and that's how we wish all of those scenarios. Now, some of them are going to hurt. They're going to hurt your score. They're going to hurt your pocketbook. They momentarily may feel like they hurt you personally in some minor way or major, whatever, but from what I saw this weekend, the times when those scenarios played out in front of me, I was very, I'll say, impressed with how I watched them unfold. So let's face it, like I think that then this goes to the Emily OB situation. This goes to these multiple foot fault scenarios. We can't keep screaming that we want players to play by the rules, and then when rules are called and infractions are noted, then we scream that that's not fair or right, that someone's calling them out or saying, well, if that's called out, why wasn't that? I don't know. We got to start somewhere. Like if there were 100 infractions this weekend and 4 got called out, then hopefully next weekend when there's 110 get called out or whatever. Like they've got to happen. They got to get called one way or another. In theory, just to tie this all together, especially in a playoff scenario, because there are typically just 2 players, yes, there should be a tournament director and or certified official that is along with the card. As you were saying, it was in this case Christine Jennings, whomever it might be. There should in fact be a player along, because obviously, there could be one person thinking you're out of bounds, one person thinking you're in, or other scenarios or foot faults or things that could get called that would be looking for a third person.
Which is so funny, because in your average B or C tier, so many times if 2 people come in at a tie, I've seen you do this. They let people okay, you guys go play it off. And there's just 2 of them, and they go and they wander off and they play it off, and 99.9% of the time they come back and Joe Schmo won and he's happy, and the other guy was like, well, whatever. Imagine that scenario now with this type of call where you don't go walk with them because you're the official.
But I always do, but or I send out officials with them.
Okay. So, but imagine someone who doesn't or hasn't in the past, where that's what happens. And now suddenly there's a dispute. No, I said he foot folded. I said he didn't. There was nobody else there. I could see a scenario like that at your average C tier or something along those lines happening, where maybe the TD doesn't have the resources because you're dealing with payouts and other divisions and things like that, and these guys just, your MA 40s just wander off to go play it off. But anyways,
Earl says self-policing is tough, can mentally affect the person calling it as well. Of course, and right now this is where our game is at, and in a bigger perspective too. You could have had somebody, we'll say, on the Emily call, and they could have still agreed with the group, with the others within the group, or they could have been on, saw it Emily's way, or whatever the case might be. You're still putting all that onto the onus of one person. And how interesting would that have been if an official came in, and let's just say they made the same call of her being OB, and then I would just love to see what the internet then says. There should be an official on every card. There was. Here's the call they made. But I saw it from my couch with 9 pixels.
Oh, the internet voice came out.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right, we're going to move on from all that. But an exciting weekend. And to wrap up all of DDO, Dynamic Disc Open, you have to talk about Champions Landing and the efforts and the work that we're likely going to see from Jeremy Rusko.
Oh, geez.
I believe some renderings were ultimately put on screen, because that's what I could tell from the context in which I was simply just listening to Germ and Nate, or excuse me, not Germ and Nate, to Germ and Ian, or Ian and Sarah, is that the renderings were available and or put on screen. Insane. And I feel like that could be a whole nother conversation for another day. But yeah, golf stuff, increased pickleball stuff, media considerations, up to 100 room hotel put there, parking for up to like 400 parking spaces, a dual level parking lot when you pull into there. Insane. It looks absolutely incredible for what he's hoping to then turn that into. And I think that is teetering or is in the comes down to some form of grant and or other assistance, potentially from the city and or state. So I'm not going to say that's the end all be all, but I think that plays a large role and factor into some of those things developing to the degree in which he's hoping to take it.
And it's funny because you hear all these people online that just don't like watching Champions Landing course. They don't like the old DDO course. They don't like, because it's flat, boring, blah, 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 all these things. And all this speculation of, is DDO going to leave the tour because, people don't like it? Or look at the players look at all the Europeans who didn't come play it because they don't like the course, which is not the case. It was just convenient for them to go home to play these events and things like that. I find it funny to think that if Rusko were to get something like that taken care of, you can almost guarantee DDO on the tour for the next 10 years. Period. I mean, like it or you can like it or not, that's what would make sense. And I know there was talks and complaints about spectators and the numbers and a lot of other things, but whatever Rusko is trying to accomplish out there could be huge. Just literally huge for the sport.
Well, and you think about the other things in which Dynamic Disc and then also Champions Landing can continue to host. We've had the Junior Worlds credited or awarded there now multiple times. We've had AM Worlds there. We've had Pro Worlds there. We've had in 5 weeks we're going to have the Pro and AM Masters Worlds there in Emporia, all of which at some point are going to likely be integrated with the Champions Landing property as well. So you think about it from all that perspective. You think the amphitheater, sound stages, along with then pickleball and some of those other sports and integration, like it is pretty insane and expansive as to what that will all entail if it in fact rolls out and plays out in that way. So
I want to ask your opinion about Hole 18. That was the most significant change we saw out at Champions Landing. EMAC took it and moved it from the traditional spot across the water. Did you like the hole? Did you like the change?
Like everything, I think there's pros and cons to it. And to be clear, I don't think that was an EMAC decision.
Really? Because I thought I saw EMAC post on social media that he designed or he had this.
I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't believe, if I recall.
Maybe he just posted the change.
Yes.
Okay.
If I recall, I think that was more driven by Jeremy Rusko himself, actually.
Oh, okay.
Although EMAC obviously has been your main course designer in that area and has done a ton of things, including on that property. I believe that was a more recent change, and if I understand correctly, and I could be absolutely wrong here, but if I understand it correctly, that was more of a push from Jeremy in a more recent capacity.
Okay.
There was talks about it a year ago,
yeah,
and all sorts of things, and then even there's a conversation to be had about the huge boulders or bricks that are there, so to speak, as opposed to any other backdrop.
I liked the look of the island personally. It
looks great, but. Could you argue? What if it was just regular string? What if it was or paint? What if it was hay bales? What if it was any other kind of item? Like it's kind of, to me, it's unique in the sense. Well, it's kind of unique almost in the sense of 16. Like that's a very rigid official backstop.
I like it. The only thing
which some people may really dislike, and I can understand that.
They're wrong, but that's okay. I like the rocks. I think the only thing that might be quote unquote better would be a matching fence to what we see on 16, just for consistency's sake.
Sure.
Like, hey, let's build a fence that looks just like 16 now, or maybe get more of those rocks and put them on 16 and try to sink the island. I don't know, but I think it could be kind of cool for consistency's sake. But I'm not complaining about either one. I like the aesthetic of it. I don't like the idea of. I honestly, I like the backstop idea.
All right. I can understand if somebody doesn't, though. I mean, you're throwing hard to try and get onto a specific space and island, and as long as you throw it hard enough, like I personally didn't see. No, I think I saw one. I was going to say one that came into the island that then got up and skipped over the rocks.
Oh, I didn't. I personally
any shot that I saw either didn't hit the rocks or they skipped and hit the rock and stayed in, and. That almost feels like it adds, I don't want to say an element of ease to it, but I feel like you're getting away with more skips than maybe in a lot of other OB situations where they're trying to have OB in play. You're getting away with it a little easier.
I really like the fact that there's an opportunity for an eagle on it, that if you play to the right spot, you can get an eagle.
I do too.
I don't love the fact that it feels like if you don't go for eagle, it's almost it's such quote unquote easy birdie. Like there's almost no decision to be made if you don't put in the eagle. You lay it up, you throw it up, you drop it in.
Sure,
like it should
be. I agree.
And we saw
you
people
plunk one in the middle of the water that you shouldn't.
Correct. We've seen people screw it up, or you throw it and it's too far right and you can't hit the putt and you take a par. I wish there was a better approach. I wish there was a better second shot if you're not going for eagle. It just feels like I watched so many of those people just, all right, here's a 250-foot layup now. And you lay it up to as close to the edge as you can or within 50 feet, and every one of those MPO players can get over from there. I just feel like it's a little bit blah on the second shot.
I can see that, but where I think it makes
exciting.
up for it, and something that I think was maybe didn't come through on camera as much as it does in person, is the elevated pin with the slope at the green.
Yeah.
Means very few putts are safe. And we watched a lot of people in front of the gallery.
Austin Turner.
We watched a lot of people, and not just to pick on him, but we watched a lot of people get to that green and then still struggle, because if you miss on that elevated basket, you probably have a putt of substance following that. And that is one thing that I think makes up I'll concede the fact that, the second shot should be relatively easy to set yourself up. I get that. But once you do get to the green, it's not a given.
No, I agree
unless
with
you're
that.
Parked.
I do agree with that. There's just something, to me, like I said, just something a little blah about that second shot. But if you had a chance somehow to make it over on the second shot, or maybe not make it over on the second shot, but if the second shot was somehow a little bit more dangerous, rather than just the little pitch up they have, and I don't know how you do that. There's all sorts of, I'm sure there's things that you could think of, but anyway, it's a first year for the hole.
Yep.
Overall, I liked it. I don't have really, I don't know if I like it more or less than the old hole 4 or the old hole 18 for the par 4. I mean, it'll grow on me like a lot of other changes.
Yeah, personally,
a lot of people hated the backstop on 16 when it was first put up, when it was just an island, and now I don't understand why more players don't hit that backstop.
Neither do I. But all right. So what we're gonna do now, because he can't stay away from us, and it's been a minute, we're gonna have Calvin Heimburg, and I'm thinking let's shut this down and have him officially ERG. URG? Yeah. Let's have him officially headline, and I already told him we won't keep him too long tonight, but let's have him open our after show. Does that sound like a good idea to you?
That sounds great. That's a great idea.
Let's do that. I've got so many great ideas.
Do you? You usually don't.
I do tonight. Well, so with that, we're going to officially close out this show. What all that really means is we're going to take a quick break. We're going to stand down. We're going to recognize a few of our supporters. We appreciate you for being Patreon supporters and then some of our show. We'll take a very quick 2-ish minute break. We'll get Calvin Heimburg hopefully all lined up and ready to go. And then we'll come back. We'll have him open the after show. We'll chit-chat with him for just a little bit. And then we'll get to the other after show stuff, which may or may not be disc golf related, but it'd be good to hear from the guy that took him a year to win. Jeez.
Over a year. It was
I know.
370 days or
something.
he
needs to go through the routine. You win, you're here, even if it takes him that long. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Huge thanks to Emily. Congratulations to her for her performance. Also, of course, congratulations to your FPO champion in dramatic fashion. That's Missy Gannon picking up another big win here in 2024. Big money Missy is finding a way to get it done. It's awesome to see. So congrats to her. When we come back, we're going to have our champion from the MPO side. That's Calvin Heimburg. So for Emily for joining us earlier, Johnny V, I'm the Disc Golf Guy. That's SmashBoxxTV Podcast 505. Don't go too far. We'll see you when you step inside the Smashbox.
Thank you to our $2 and above patrons. Your name is listed below in the credits. If you are interested in being listed as a producer in the SmashBoxx TV credits and supporting this and other fine podcasts, please visit patreon.com/SmashBoxxTV.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to SmashBoxxTV's podcast 505's Aftershow. It's the Aftershow.
It is.
It's going to be a special one tonight. Not that they're not all special, but tonight's extra special.
Extra? He gets extra?
Extra. Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I guess.
Took him extra long to win to get here.
I guess it did.
All right, without further ado, I think he's ready to go. Coming in from Vegas, our champion this weekend at the Dynamic Disc Open, Calvin Heimburg.
Hey, buddy.
Hi, Calvin.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
That's
Good.
good.
Just got into Vegas here this evening. Had a couple days of driving through some not so great weather, but I'm here, and I'll be playing the Las Vegas Challenge this week.
Yeah. First of all, of course, congratulations about Dynamic Disc Open this weekend. We'll talk about that. But one of the main things I'm seeing on social media is a ton of our players that are heading west, whether it be toward California for the for Masters Cup, whether it's to Colorado for the 303 Q Series event, or to Vegas. Feels like you guys are all experiencing some kind of nasty weather. What were you driving through?
So definitely high winds. I got hailed on Kansas. I got stuck kind of on 70 a little past Denver last night, with some extremely high winds and snow. I got a text from Terry. Oh, no,
You can ignore it. I do.
I think last night, like I started going through, 70 through the passes, and it was probably like sustained 40 plus mile an hour winds with gusts 60 to 70. So, I ended up pulling off, and I got a hotel in Georgetown. There was like a severe wind warning until 6 a.m. this morning, but was able to get through all the passes this morning and drove the rest of the way to Vegas.
That's wild. And I think of even just recently last night, I think in Avery and Leah Jenkins, like neck of the woods, Pawhuska, Oklahoma, there was some tornadoes and some insane stuff that passed through there. Obviously stuff just ripping all over, and then lots of snow and everything else. So good to hear you're safe. I just map quested. I just Google mapped
Wow.
it.
How old are you?
Yeah.
Rand McNally?
1,291 miles. We'll call it 1,292. 18 hours and 59 minutes is what it says from Emporia to Vegas. Ouch.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think it took me definitely a long drive. Yeah, I woke up this morning and weren't out of snow, but I think I was driving like 40 miles an hour on this morning. The speed realist with the things.
Yeah, that does, especially, you're in a big touring van, so to speak, and so when you talk about those high winds, like you look like you're almost as tall as those drivable billboards around in Vegas. Like you got plenty of sidewall there.
Yeah, definitely not ideal. If it's like a headwind or tailwind, it's not too bad, but you get into crosswinds and it's really miserable driving.
Okay, well, good to hear you're safe, and we won't keep you too long. It sounds like your internet's maybe just a tad choppy anyway, but does it feel any different to come back, and it's been a little over a year for this big of a win? How does it feel? Is it like riding a bike, or does it feel any more or less special than any other victory?
It's always great to win. That's what we go out there and try to do. I don't think it really feels any more or less special. I've definitely had pretty decently long spans without a win before. I think I don't know when that was. whatever, a couple years ago. I think I might have had a similar span between wins. So it's hard to win, and you just sometimes it just doesn't happen for a while. But all you can do is just keep trying, put yourself in position, and know that you can do it when you give yourself the opportunity eventually.
Does it mean any more when you win an event that you haven't won in the past? Like, you've got Jonesboro a few times, but to get a new one, kind of like, another new trophy, or just thinking to yourself, oh, this is another kind of course that I know I can do well on, even if you have taken second or third or fourth in the past.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool to win an event that you haven't won before. As you said, I have played well in Emporia in the past. So I definitely knew I was capable of, competing at a high level and coming out with a win there. I just, hadn't done it yet, but I do feel very comfortable out there at Country Club. It definitely sets up really well for me. There aren't a ton of shots that call, for forehand for me, since that's not really 100% right now. It's nice that I can kind of work around that. It's not like a necessity out there. Generally, when there is a forehand favored hole, there is like some kind of backhand workaround, even if it is a harder shot, but it's still viable, and it allows you to still score in the hole.
How long? You mentioned your forehand. Do you have a timetable? Like when you think it's going to be healthy enough to start kind of whipping them around again?
I don't have a timetable. It's just kind of taking it, week by week, and just seeing what my body is telling me. I feel comfortable throwing shorter ones right now, but I definitely don't feel as comfortable throwing really hard ones. I wasn't throwing any off the tee out there at Country Club. But yeah, it's just, we'll see. I really don't have a timetable, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but okay. Hopefully sooner than later.
The glass blown trophy that you won this weekend, it is glass blown. It seems like it's the largest it's ever been, and then of course that people calling for bowling balls and everything else. Where does this trophy rank among your trophies in terms of just how you, I don't want to say value it, but how you look and feel about having a trophy of that style?
I think it's pretty cool. It is definitely big, but I think, I don't know, it's cool to look at. It's got like some glitter and sparkle in there. Like, I think it's a pretty cool trophy. And they've always kind of had these glass blown balls or whatnot. So it is cool to have one. I would say, I'm a pretty big fan of like the glass or like the crystal trophies. I feel like those tend to look pretty cool. So, I would say it ranks as a pretty cool trophy. I don't know the exact number. I'd have to like really think of where it ranks and what I have, but, I don't know. I'd put it up there. I like some of the other ones, like, I think one of my favorite ones, it doesn't even really feel like a win, but it's my tie with Ricky, the little Ledgestone, whatever, goblet or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But, I got the goblet. I beat him out at Idlewild the next week. So, I like that one. I got a pretty cool vase from Memorial back in 2020. That one's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. I think I tend to like the glass trophies.
And that vase probably, I presumably came from Mace Man, also a glass blown, vase of sorts that we've seen at USDGCs and Memorial and a couple other events as of recently. And absolutely, I think, I agree. They're absolutely beautiful. It's just, it's become, I feel like, such a staple of being, obviously the glass blown open, and then having these, they just stand out as such a unique trophy overall. And then this year they just went so big with it.
I was kind of surprised when I first saw it on FPO. I was like, wow, they went all out this year.
Yeah. Even
guy ran out of air.
Yeah, they're heavy.
Is it mentally or physically tough to get done with that event, to drive all of these hours and all of these miles, to show up for an A-tier, 4-round A-tier using multiple courses? Like, does that drag on you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're, traveling that far in that period of time, it's definitely, going to take a toll on the body. And, but I mean, I knew, going into the season, I was playing this one, and Innova really wanted me here. I didn't have to, play DDO and then make that trek. I could have taken that week off. So I kind of put this on myself, but, I wanted to play DDO. Especially with, how close I was to winning there last year. I wanted to go back and try to do it this year. So, I think really this crunch is kind of really on me, since I knew this was, just like one that was, in a way, I wouldn't say non-negotiable, but, I was really wanted out here. So, I knew I was going to be out here. It is definitely, a grind, but, and I actually am really surprised to see there's a decent number of pretty good players on the registration for the event. So quite a few people are coming out here to play this event still, even though it isn't a elite series, which is cool. I'm sure, the event team probably had a lot of questions, as to whether or not, they would get any good turnout when they found out they were no longer on the tour. So I'm sure they're pretty happy about it. I know they ended up moving their dates from early in the year to a little bit later to try to make it work. But, I've had some success here out at Vegas. I've won in Vegas a couple of times, so I'm excited to get back out there. I haven't even looked at the course schedule. I don't know if I'm playing all 3 courses or if it's 2 courses like last year, but I'm sure they're not too different. They don't tend to make too many changes out there, so I should have some familiarity with most of them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Being a 4-day event and just coming off DDO, how much practice are you going to do? You get 1 day out there and just kind of walk the other ones, or are you going to try to get each? If you're playing 2, get both of them in, or are you going to kind of treat this one a little bit more lax?
Well, definitely for sure. Get 1 course practice in. I mean, I don't know if it's 1, 2, or 3. I'm assuming it would be either 2 or 3 courses. Yeah, I might walk another. I know, I rode in town later this afternoon, this evening, and it was pretty hot. So I don't know how realistic it would be to go out there and get 2 rounds in. It was like 90 something degrees on my car thermometer when I rolled in. So I think maybe just 1 round tomorrow. I'll probably look at the course schedule, see which course I play first. I'll probably end up just playing that one. I feel like just to make sure I can be comfortable with the first course, and then the end of a course hasn't really changed that much. Honestly, none of them really changed. So I think it should be pretty easy to go out there and feel comfortable.
I'm looking at your schedule coming up, and I see you're going to do the West Coast swing. You've got Portland and Beaver State. And then the Turku a week later, and then a week later Preserve. Are you really going to do the Turku, or are you going to fly out there for one event?
No, I have been lazy and have not submitted. I wasn't sure what I was doing earlier in the year, sure. But I'm actually not going to be playing for a decent little bit after Portland. I have a family wedding the week of the Preserve, so I won't be playing the Preserve. So I think the next one back for me will be Des Moines, and then after Des Moines, I'll be flying over to Europe.
Okay.
I was just going to try to even help you out.
Oh, it's like a whole month vacation. Nice.
And look at your course schedule, but now I'm getting lost in lost in the sauce here. If I can only download this and take a better look at it. But anyway,
I'm sure I got an email with it.
Exactly, and we know they're on top of it. And I'll go ahead and say, in essence, kind of echo that. Obviously, there was some question at the beginning of the year. Las Vegas seemed to be taken by surprise that they weren't going to be kicking off the tour. We saw the tour opening in Florida this year, and then Las Vegas and their team really had, I don't want to say, I don't know if scramble is the right word, but they definitely were put in a predicament of, hey, when do we host the event? How big do we go? And they essentially said, we want to go as big as we've ever gone any other time. We're just simply not going to be on the tour. And then I think ultimately lobbied and requested to have this date, which turns out to still be a relatively busy weekend, but trying to get the players heading from, Kansas into California for next weekend and then being a stop either on the way in or on the way back out turned out to be, the best scenario. So hats off to all of the Las Vegas crew, because I know this has been just as big or bigger than any other event, and being the 25th annual, they didn't want to, they weren't out to cut any corners or anything. So I wish everybody the best, because I know there's an insane amount of work that's going on out there. And then I think with that, maybe you do or don't know this, but I think per typical fashion of the last few years, there's going to be still a Sexton Firebird release along with a signature disc of yours. Are we looking at a Destroyer or Toro, or what's the plan? Do you know?
I believe there is some release. I don't know. I don't
think
know
it's a Toro.
much about it.
Yeah, I think it's a Toro again.
Yeah.
Have you hired anyone to get your Sexton Firebird yet?
No, nothing for nothing. I purely from a collectability standpoint, I need one for my collection. So maybe I got to lean into you, my good buddy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking to flip it. I'm not trying to sell it. I just want one.
I know,
for
that's
the collection.
why I asked.
So if you want to hook a brother up,
I'll see what I can do. Maybe I can cut the line or something.
I mean, I do buy your Toros every year as well, I feel like. So I've been, and so if you could get me one of each, I will gladly pay you for
I've got the Calvin bag too. I got the Squatch bag. I mean, we're just
fanboys here.
That's right. I mean, what can I say?
And I guess I have to come through for you now.
And if you ever, want some of those old Calvin Heimburg, Tour Series Destroyers I have from early days, are you still throwing those?
Which ones?
Like the old ones that you like that I had way back when?
The first run of Halo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have one or two of those in the bag. I got one in the bag right now. Yeah, I still bag one. I threw some out there at a DDO. It's really overstable.
Okay. So, maybe there's some trade bait.
Maybe we can trade.
Yeah, there's some trade bait out there. I'd be all about it, because I've been standing in those lines. Usually I go live and stand in those lines for a few hours just to get those discs. And this year I won't be out there. Someone did ask on the board, I believe, don't fully quote me or bet the farm on this, but I believe Gatekeeper is filming MPO and FPO and will be doing post-production coverage. I don't know if it's for sure next day. I think it is. But MPO and FPO is done by Gatekeeper. At one point, I put in some form of a bid, but I'm guessing they offered to do both. I don't know if it was a financial or just a convenience thing. But so best of luck to them out there. But Gatekeeper will be out there, is what I recall. Oh, no, wait.
Ace Run saying GK Pro.
Ace Run saying it's GK Pro. Well, then I'm thoroughly confused, because I thought I was told Gatekeeper at one point.
Maybe Ace Run is wrong. We don't know. What does that guy know? It's not like he cameras with them every week.
Jeez. All right.
What does he know?
We had a lengthy discussion before you joined us. Just aggregate playoffs, love or hate. Any given scenario. What any thought on the aggregate playoff like we saw on the FPO side this weekend? What do you think of the implementation of them?
It's not something I'd ever seen before. I think it's kind of cool. I don't know. I haven't put much thought into it, but I think I don't know. I think it's cool. You get to see some more decision making, as opposed to just if I don't make this, I lose on the first hole.
Okay.
So I think it could be cool. I don't know. I definitely need to think about it a little more. Need to see more aggregate playoffs played through, but I don't know. It seemed like it played pretty cool, honestly. Like I think it's a pretty neat concept.
Yeah, especially when you think about a hole like 16 that clearly has, decided a world championships just a couple years ago with Aaron and Paul. And it's decided, Haley and Holland last year for the win. So to have it not necessarily be the one throw on the one hole and officially ending it at that point. One question somebody posed on the board earlier that we never really got around to talking about ourselves is the new drop zone location on 16. Yay, nay, or do you? What are your thoughts on it?
I don't know. I don't think it probably played the way they thought. I think I'm not a huge fan of those like shorter drop zone putt, say par. I don't really like those, and I don't think it even probably played the way they thought. I mean, people weren't really running it, so like I think they were like trying to entice more people to run it and then maybe go in the water, but I didn't see that really happening. I think people, once they missed the island, they were just accepting bogey. At least from the old one, it was a little farther. Like bogey wasn't even like guaranteed. You could throw it in the water again, So I wasn't a huge fan of the new one. I guess I don't think it played the way they wanted to. I think they expected more people to be a little more aggressive.
I really like the old one. I felt it was iconic. When someone did happen to hit it, you had all the spectators there that you could kind of the image of Ricky running it through or Cy hitting it a couple of years ago. Personally, I think Kelvin's right in that it just, from where it was, there was almost no chance to go at it unless you absolutely were in like the final round and you needed it. I don't think the incentive was there. And whereas if the other one, you could throw it in on any given try. And
well, along those lines, then how about, Johnny and I closed out the show talking about the change on 18, and what are your thoughts about how that played out overall and how they moved it?
I think as a whole, it's probably a slightly easier hole. It's definitely an easier hole than it used to be. But I think, I don't know how it scored because you did have people like taking huge numbers on it. So I feel like if you remove those like huge outliers, it would have scored easier. But I think I liked it. I think, there's a lot of room for, scoring separation. You can have someone go out there, get a 3 on it, but it's like really not unheard of for someone to maybe even bogey it. It just takes one little hiccup, like you throw an inbounds drive, but then somehow mess up the layup, or you throw in the water or whatnot. It's pretty easy to take a bogey on as well, even though like if you throw a good drive, it is a lot of short shots. Honestly, I parred it every single round. Like I did not play that hole very well. So I think it played pretty cool. I do like how it had like a pretty cool risk reward option for Eagle if that is something you wanted to go for.
So to hear you parred it all 3 rounds sounds disappointing. Like, how'd you F it up?
It's not good. It's not good.
What did you do?
I parred it.
Yeah, but how? What terrible shots are you throwing? Did you someone of your skill to get par?
Yeah, do you miss putts when you're on the island? Did you?
I was always on the island. The last day I wasn't like, I threw that last shot. I wasn't even really trying to get close. I was just going straight across. I'm not hitting anything. Just get me on the grass so I can lay up.
Okay.
But like, the other 2 days, I think I missed one circle, one putt, and then I had another putt that was like just outside the circle. Just not great approaches, honestly. It's like one of those shots that, it's right there, but the distance can be a little bit deceiving, and then, it is an island, so it can be a little bit nervy.
Did you feel anything different on that final round? Your putting looked so good. Like, did you feel different? Was it just that everything happened to be going in this round, or did you make any tweaks? What was happening on the final round?
I definitely felt really good and really comfortable on the putting green. I used a different putter that round than I used the other 2 rounds. I put a new putter in the bag.
Same mold?
Same mold, just a new KC AVR. I don't know. I haven't really been super stoked on my putting for the past few weeks, so. And I really wasn't the first 2 rounds. I definitely had a handful of circle 1 misses those first couple rounds that I wasn't too stoked about. So kind of changed something up. And honestly, like, it's a putter. It really realistically has nothing to do with the putter. Like I mean, I feel like, I don't know, putting is like one of those things where it's just, you're lobbing it at the basket. So there's not a whole, it's not moving fast. Like, it's not, the disc isn't going to like turn because, I don't know, they're like all those little micro things that happen when discs are moving way faster aren't happening with a putter. So I think it was more just a mental thing. I just needed something to be different. But yeah, I felt very comfortable out there, and you know, I feel like that was the first time in a few weeks where I was just letting the putter fly.
Was it, obviously you got out to the incredible start, you know, getting 7 for 7. Was there a point, and then you're directly, because Ricky's on the card and seeing what Ricky's doing and so on and so forth, and everyone else, was there a point where you felt like, okay, this is mine to lose. Like, I should have this under control now, and let's just close this thing out. At what point in the round was that?
I don't know. I don't really feel like you're ever really that safe on that course. Like that finishing stretch, 16, 17, 18, like all of those could be 2-stroke swings, and it really wouldn't be, you know, that hard to imagine it happening on any of those holes. So I don't think there was really ever like, I felt, you know, after 16 I feel like I felt pretty good, but but before before 16, like, it was definitely still up in the air, you know. Like, there was definitely nothing was set in stone until after that hole, and even then nothing's really set in stone. But
sure,
I mean, it definitely would have taken a lot of mishaps.
When you threw 16, did you expect it to stay on the island in that final round? Everybody saw it hit the wall, took kind of a funny angle where then it hit the ground and rolled better. Whereas we saw a lot of people, like, when you let go of that disc, did you think, nah, there's a stroke?
No, I mean, I let go of that disc and it was pretty similar to the shot I threw the day before. It was just too high.
Okay.
I'm definitely trying to throw that shot lower and more driven, but I don't know if I just was worried about that crosswind, like, slamming the disc down, but it really wasn't doing that all week, even though that crosswind was there. So the disc was definitely thrown too high. I was fortunate to hit the wall. And yeah, I mean, I'll take it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was kind of a kick to the stomach watching your shot coming at a funny angle, hit the wall, hit the ground, roll better. Watching Ricky hit dead center of that back, get and roll all the way across the island and go OB. Little insult to injury, unfortunately for Rick, but you know, what do you do? Not your fault.
I think you just don't play to hit the wall.
Really? You don't play to hit the wall?
If you don't want any chance of anything funny happening, you don't hit the wall. But I also don't think the wall should be there. But
fair enough. Yeah.
Hot take.
I'm anti-wall.
Well, is it fair to say, like, that's kind of I don't want to say the ultimate bailout, but you're playing for that back wall. I mean, it's obviously a pretty damn convenient backstop. I mean, as it's intended to be. But do you feel like it's just too forgiving, or I don't want to say too easy, but how would you describe that back wall then?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely forgiving. I don't know. I actually talked to Rusco a little bit about it. I think they put it there because they wanted more people to run the island. I guess a lot of people weren't running the island when there wasn't a wall there, which I didn't realize was a thing. I guess
you didn't know I could. I didn't know I couldn't do it.
I didn't know I couldn't let people lay up. What?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I just feel like whenever you're playing towards like a wall as a backboard, I don't like it. I feel like it removes some of like the touch from the game. I think like in the end, like we're looking at a 320-foot shot that is, you know, well within the range of everyone in our division. You know, throwing a slow disc, they can throw a fast disc high and try to spike it on there. There's so many ways you can try to approach that island without slamming into a wall and actually sticking it. And maybe I feel this way a little more right now because, you know, it wasn't super windy this year. But I don't know. I don't like the wall.
So
I mean, as a chump, I'd be aiming, like I said, I'd be aiming hardcore for that
Yeah.
wall. That's the only thing I'm looking at. But I could also see for speed of play. Like you have, without that wall, 20, 30% more people going out of bounds. And I could see how that could maybe slow down the round to where you would have a wait on 16.
but instead they stay in bounds and they run at the putt, go out of bounds from there, and they're still dealing with more timing. So then I have to segue that right into the wall on 18, which Johnny and I just had a conversation about. Does some or any of that apply to those massive boulders on 18? Do you like those? Would you rather see a painted line or something else there?
I think if it was a painted line in that instance, it would look pretty lame. I think in that case it kind of needs it aesthetically as some kind of something to differentiate it from the rest of what's behind it. But in the case of 16, it's literally a massive land and water. Like you have everything to find around it. You don't really need any border. I also just think, like, I don't know. I mean, it's like typically I feel like I don't feel like those boulders really came that much into play on 18 either. I feel like most of the shots coming into that hole were much, like, most of the time people were throwing in that hole and it's under 250 feet. So I just don't see, like, I don't think people were like aiming to smoke it into that back wall, but I could be wrong. Maybe that's what I should have been doing,
Yeah, why are we asking you? You parred it 3 times. Jeez.
I mean, it's also a difference in the style of green. You've got 18, which has a sloped up green where people can drive it into the ground if they really want, and then you have the boulders there. So maybe the boulders have less of effect as opposed to 16, where there is no. I mean, the island is kind of a mound in general, but as far as 16 goes, I don't mind the wall, but maybe cut the height in half.
That was funny. I was thinking the same
just
thing.
because the worst thing is to watch someone get just a crappy little roll off the back of the island, which it would prevent that, but it makes it a lot more difficult to just drive that wall. To think like someone like me, be like, hey, there it is.
If you're hitting it in the air, you're throwing it way too hard. The wall already.
Yeah,
right?
but that is kind of the play for a lot of people. I feel like you can just like drive into that wall like that, and then you make your choice on whether or not you're running the putt when you get up there.
Sure.
How you're feeling. I don't know. I feel like it removes some of the decision making off the tee.
So we'll go. Last point on these 2 instances, and only because this was a rumor that I heard. Rumor mill, rumor whispers.
That's creepy.
Would you like to see any form of, I'll say 6-inch barrier or wall that defines the front of either of those island shots at the front? So rather than the string on 16, and I think there's probably a string on 18. What if there were a 6-inch wall, as in you have to basically get over that in the air? Would indifferent? Any thoughts on that?
I feel like it would look very, very bad.
Okay.
But I don't know. I feel like optically it would look very weird. And also, like, I don't know. I think it's like, so if I take 16, for example, like, then, like, I don't know, you're eliminating the possibility for, a roll away off that green into the water. I don't know.
That's a good point. I guess I was thinking of it more from a driving perspective, but I didn't think of it from preventing a roll into the water perspective.
If someone hits the basket and rolls, but I think it's also really cool some of the water skips we saw, like we saw Missy Gannon. I mean, I think that adds some excitement, and to have the wall, to know that the minute that thing gets too low, that's going to be out of bounds. Right now, we've got a little bit of showmanship. You could have a Reed Frescura who tries to skip it off the water for all we know. Yeah. But I kind of, the front wall, no go, Tara.
Okay. No, I'm talked out of it.
Yeah, I think I don't know, without that back wall, the water skip, like, as an actual play on 16 is way more viable. Like, that's how I used to play that hole. when it got like super windy is I would try to skip it off the water. I would drive something super hard at the water and try to get that pop up, because you get that little nose up pop and it kind of kills a lot of the speed, and it's easier to like kind of get something to stop that way. So that isn't really a play anymore with that back wall, but that definitely was a pretty viable option in the past, or maybe only for crazy people. I don't know.
Well,
all right. Last couple of weekends, 5th place, excuse me, at Champions Cup. Obviously, the win here. Is there anything you attribute? We'll say I'll call it a mishap at a misstep, whatever you want to call it, at Music City. But otherwise, the last couple of months have been pretty much on par with top level golf, top 5 positioning. Is there anything holding you back from continuing to place in the top 4 or 5 spots or podium week in and week out right now?
The only thing that's really bothering me is, I don't really have my full forehand. Some courses that doesn't mean as much as others. And then, I think really where I would say like universally it's the biggest issue is, those days that you're a little off and you're putting yourself in positions you're not planning on being in. Sometimes that forehand really can bail you out. You can throw some bigger shots from some funkier lies. But, if I'm throwing well off the tee, that's generally not too big of an issue. So it's just about, throwing good tee shots and then making putts. People win for a long time just throwing backhands. It is definitely a little bit harder, but you definitely can.
And that's got to feel that much better knowing that you successfully completed that this weekend as well.
I threw some forehands. Yeah,
somebody asked me, I think a fan, as we were walking around, said something about, is Calvin throwing forehands right yet or something? I said, I think it's pretty reserved, in a case-by-case short range maybe. And then literally it was like 2 throws later, you were throwing a forehand approach of sorts. And I was like, oh, there you go. Like that. I don't know if we're going to see a lot more than that, but there's your answer. So,
yeah, I probably had a couple around out there last week.
Or you could watch the Ace Run video coming out tomorrow where you throw lefty, right?
What?
Yeah, it's something else. It's something else.
Break without spoiling it too much, because I saw an Instagram post last week, but Ace Run Productions are good friends over there. Well, at least one of them. Felix is all right. What? I'm just kidding. What should people be expecting on said video that's dropping over there at Ace Run?
A good time, maybe a little bit of cheating.
Okay.
Possibly killing innocent bystanders.
Okay.
But overall quality of shot, at least for me, maybe like 1 to 2 out of 10. But there are some pretty sick shots during that round. So just
okay.
I think if there was like a not top 10 sequence throughout the entire video, I would be the majority of the shots. I think I would be I'd probably get like 7 to 8 of the top 10 worst shots.
Wow. So you're setting the bar low, and to set it up for everyone, it's you and Zach Melton teamed up, if I recall, against Zach Arlinghouse and Chris Dickerson, and everybody's throwing opposite handed.
Yeah. And that's a little different for Zach Arlinghouse, He on a normal day is left hand backhand, right hand forehand. So he was right hand backhand, left hand forehand. But it's weird, but I don't know why he does that.
Well, I give you guys a lot of credit for being vulnerable like that and showing somebody what I'm going to guess is less than stellar golf, even if it is your opposite hand.
I disagree. I think they do it all so they can all just make fun of each other.
Yeah, but now it's going to be like on the internet, and everybody else is going to have to, have a chance to watch it.
Okay, I'll give them that.
So
yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to get better, Maybe one day. Yeah. Actually, no. There's no chance. Like I'm so far from ever throwing a left-handed shot on tour. Like it's not even close.
from your recollection, because I can think of course, Nico and I can think of Eagle. Those two jump out at me. Who, if you had to pick the top 5 players to throw an offhand or an opposite-handed shot, who jumps to mind if you said, yes, this is a contest and I'm going to pick these 5 people? Who would that be? That you'd put in that contest?
2 of them got to be Nico and Eagle, because I've seen them do it.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Arlinghouse is also in there. I know he's thrown right-hand, backhand in tournament.
Okay.
Trying to think if I've seen any.
Bradley Williams is a name that's getting thrown on the board. Is he of that caliber?
I'd believe it. I'm trying to. I feel like I had to have seen him throw lefty before. It was probably just so good I thought it was a right-handed shot, honestly.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if there's anyone else, but yeah, Brad would probably be a good one. I'm trying to think. There's got to be, because there's definitely some people that. Oh, I think Garrett can throw pretty good.
Yeah, he cleared the water at USDGC.
That's right.
Yeah,
he cleared the water opposite-handed in the distance competition from like the old 18s fairway or 18s fairway over to 5s fairway. He cleared the water with an opposite-hand throw.
That's gross. I don't like
that's
that.
impressive. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty solid 5.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Calvin, I gotta know, what is the rowdiest, wildest, craziest Vegas thing you're gonna do this weekend? Because when in Vegas, I know you get wild.
I don't know. I don't really. I don't have any plans. The normal crew of people I hang out with isn't really here either. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to find some people to egg me on to go do something. I guess I don't have any plans.
Okay.
Go see that Michael Jackson Cirque du Soleil show. See if you can get on stage or something. Volunteer.
That could be exciting. That could be exciting.
Yeah. Now's the time. If your normal crew isn't there, now's when you go out and get rowdy, so no one knows what happened.
Yeah, there's no evidence
of
any kind.
There's always evidence.
There's true.
Always evidence.
Yeah.
You can't get away with anything anymore.
No, there's a camera
everywhere.
or a dash cam or a city cam, store cam. There's a camera everywhere. So I know how much trouble you are.
Yep.
All right. Well, we don't want to keep you too late. I do have one other question. What was the dumbest thing that Tour Life asked you tonight? What was their worst question?
The worst question, Tour Life?
Had to be something Zach asked, right?
No. I'm trying to remember. What was the dumbest thing we talked about? It was so long. I was on there for the whole episode. I was on there for like 2.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
So I'm trying to think. I know there were dumb things, but I'm honestly just drawing a blank.
There's too many. Okay.
We get it.
And I kid. I don't need anybody coming at me or.
Oh, here. I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
We'll get your take. What's your take on Saturday's round? The spotter on 16 being a Jedi.
Let me just tell you, as a non-Star Wars fanatic, it didn't excite me the way it did so many others. But not only did I enjoy some time at Bourbon Cowboy with him, but then Sunday he was out there also doing some scorekeeping, and by all accounts, like, next level, world class, top notch. He had a green and a red lightsaber, the full outfit, energetic. Like, I don't know how that gets topped. I'll say that just as a fan.
It was on May the 4th.
and May the 4th.
It was.
Like, I probably didn't fanboy as hard as others, but it was pretty damn good.
I had to question at first if that wasn't EMAC. When I first heard about it, that there was a guy, and I was like, well, EMAC is a huge Star Wars fan. He's got
I know,
Star Wars tattoos, and I thought, like, there's no way he'd be spotting on 16, but I'm like, maybe he lost a bet. Anything possible. And then I quickly, at one point, I think our lunch hour, looked it up. I'm like, okay, not EMAC.
No.
Just to be safe.
Yeah, it was incredible. Could you name a better, like, stars aligning in any better way for a better exhibition at all anywhere else? You liked it.
Yeah, I was honestly fine with it. The only thing that I thought would be weird is, the only point that Brody brought up about it was, what if someone aced, right? And this thing gets on SportsCenter top 10, and you just got this dude with lightsabers waving them around in the background. That was the only point that I had. Apparently we got clowned even without on SportsCenter with Niklas, even without a Jedi with lightsabers. So
no. To be fair, 2 points. That one, a SportsCenter person, like there's a flip of a coin whether they're going to rip on us no matter what. Niklas was at a golf course. He's got a unique name that I think they butchered. Obviously he's European, so on and so forth. So I think there's a flip of the coin whether they take any highlight or A shot seriously right off the bat. And then B, or my second point to that would be, it was so fitting with May the 4th that I think even somebody that did want to rip on it would be like, hey, these guys were into it at this tournament. It's May the 4th. There's a Star Wars theme, worker out there. Like, I do understand what Brody's saying. I don't think it's crazy what he's saying at all. But it was so like perfectly lined up on May the 4th. Any other day, yeah, I think the point is more valid. But on that day, I mean, because there's just so many Star Wars fanatics, right? So I don't think it's that crazy. Fair. I mean, if there was some insane shot, at an NBA game, or something happened at an MLB game, and some celebration involved, someone dressed up similarly, it would hold up.
Yeah, if you had one of your bench guys at the NBA, someone who probably wasn't going to go into the game, sitting there in like a Jedi robe. No, I don't think too many, or had like a Yoda mask,
or there's a stormtrooper out somewhere. Like I get his point, I really do, but it's such a cultural, iconic cultural thing that I don't think they would have clowned too hard. And like I said, they maybe would no matter what we do. So
that's fair.
That's my counterpoint. Anyway, excuse me. Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you've had a long day of driving and you've had a long night of podcasting, and we really do appreciate you joining us. You're obviously welcome anytime. You don't have to win, but it's awesome when you do, and congratulations.
You say that, but you don't ever invite me.
You don't need an invite. That's what I'm saying. Is like, you could be like, hey, you want me to? I've got this going on or that going on, or hey, you got anyone lined up for Tuesday, or I'd like to jump on Tuesday. Like you have that open invite anytime.
Do you use the same password all the time?
No, it changes every single week.
Oh, dang.
So
that would be great if I could just log in unannounced every once in a while.
The only problem with that is if we didn't and you tried to log in, you may kick off the existing guests that might be on if we were to keep same passwords. So that's why,
wouldn't that be great though? Like 1 second you're talking to, whoever, Paul Macbeth, and the next you're talking to me.
Yes.
I'd be okay with
the
that.
uninvited Kelvin drop-ins. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could give
sounds like a segment.
We could give you your own number though. And then
like
just
a bat phone.
Yeah, and then you have your own number. Whenever you wanted to dial in, you just dial in and we bring you into the show. I'm saying we've got options.
Just if I'm ever watching live and I want to comment on something.
Yeah, if you need to
actually,
chime in.
you assholes, here's what I think.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you need to be a guest host? I know some of the other podcasts, like Tour Life, occasionally brings on, they're non-standards, it's Yuli and Paul, and then every once in a while they have other people fill in, like tonight. Do you feel like you should be a guest host, like the three of us, then we're interviewing some fourth?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm a good interviewer, I don't know. I guess only time could tell. Maybe I'll have to try it sometime.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to know what you would ask other golfers.
Yeah, I mean, because none of this is scripted. This is all off the cuff, and all you got to do is just spit some stuff out.
I guess it depends. I guess it depends on the golfer.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like
I don't know.
how you would ask questions breaking down someone's round. Like we had Emily Weatherman on earlier. Like, what would you ask her?
Yeah, what do you want to know most? Let's see if we can answer it. What do you, if Emily was on with us right now, what would you most want to know coming off her third place performance this weekend, 18 years old, on tour now and all that? What would you want to know?
First question, true, false, you think your disc was inbounds?
She said true. She thought it
said
was.
true.
Okay, cool. Like I can't really input, I don't have, like, all the pictures are hard to tell, and then, like, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But that would be the first question I would ask, that's all I want. Like, that was probably like the biggest thing right there, you just.
Yeah, I mean,
false.
nothing
That's
for
all we
nothing.
need to know.
Like, obviously, your win in overtaking Ricky in the final round. Missy winning in a very rare now aggregate playoff over the defending champ Haley. Those are your two leading stories, but right there, right underneath it is Emily's weekend / her whole 18 call. Like, and I kind of hate that call overshadowed maybe even her play a little bit, right? Like, I hate that.
Yeah, she played really well. She played really
Mm-hmm.
well. I watched a bunch of that final round, so she was playing really well. She was right there in contention. I feel like she played really good at Texas States or something.
She did. That was the one other event this year specifically where I think she finished 8th, and our other events were 20th and 30th and 40th or whatever. But yeah, that was the other event she played really well on the tour this year.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool to see a new face. Doing well. I don't know. Is she like on tour now, or is she just out for a couple tournaments?
Yeah, she told us that she's on tour. She doesn't have the tour card, so she actually has to play some of the qualifiers in order to get into. Because we looked at her upcoming schedule, and I was like, "You're not hitting the the West Coast swing. You're not
Portland, Beaver State, any of those."
And so she said she has a whole list of events that she has to qualify to get into, and she's hoping at some point she can earn her tour card. If she keeps playing like this, it won't be a problem.
No, I mean, definitely not. Placing high, getting a lot of points. I don't know how many tour cards they hand out on the FPO side, but
32 or something. I don't know. I'm just making numbers up.
I don't know, but yeah, she keeps playing well. It should be no problem at all.
Yeah, it was certainly very impressive. Speaking of playing well, what is if you had $500 that you just genuinely didn't care about? What is the game of choice in Vegas? Game or style or gambling mechanism? What is that where you'd go to with $500 that truly was you're okay with losing or not?
I feel like I'm not really a gambler, so I'm just gonna go in there on probably either play blackjack or the roulette wheel, one of those two. But I'd say probably blackjack would probably be my first choice. But it's possible, just spin the wheel, put your money down. Maybe you get lucky.
All right. Will you do that with any money this weekend? Will you as much as put down $10 or $100 at any point?
Probably not. Not really a gambler, but you never know. As I said, my normal crew's not here. Maybe I get mixed up with some rowdy folk. Or
Vinny falls in with the wrong crowd.
Before you know it, I'm just out at the casino late night.
I want to see Vinny and Gannon Burr at the blackjack table.
Well, yeah, I guess Gannon can get in there.
Because he can now.
Yeah, he could last year. Happy birthday. Gannon Burr actually turned 19 today still. And out in Vegas, it's even earlier. So happy birthday to Gannon Burr. That was a quick side note. So just a pro tip. If you're at anywhere in Vegas and a female walks by and says, "Hey, I like your pants," just ignore her and just keep walking. It's quite an interesting line that I've heard more than once, usually by lady callers. And one of I think the most entertaining things that can happen in Vegas is the absurd opening lines that you often hear from
Ladies of the night.
Ladies of the night. And I think one that I've heard more than once, maybe they just really like my pants, but I've heard more than once now in the years that I visited, just in passing, like literally walking the opposite way. Oh, I like your pants. Like, what a weird line. And it's just one that stuck with. So clearly it worked to some degree that I remembered it, but that's as far as it went. So, pro tip.
All right. Well, thanks for the pro tip.
It's just so weird. Yeah. Caught me off guard.
You caught us all off guard with that statement, Terry. I'm not going to lie.
I'm just saying there's a lot of funny shenanigans that I know can take place and all, but when I think about just the most bizarre things and like ways that you can overhear some of these lines go, that one is the one that sticks out. So to some degree, it must work. I don't know if they keep using it. All right. Well, I'll do my best to not make. I canceled. Originally I had a flight going to Vegas tomorrow because I thought I might be part of a media crew, and just tonight I canceled it. Like, oh, this is officially not happening. But if it turns out that I find myself out there for the latter part of the weekend, I'll come find you, and we'll head to the blackjack table.
All right. Sounds good.
I'll keep you out of the rest of the trouble.
See you there.
Yeah. Once again, that's falling in with the wrong type of people. If you're out with Terry, you've fallen in with the wrong type of people.
Oh, we'll have a good time.
That could still mean you're the wrong crowd. You know?
Yeah. I rest my case.
I have never led anyone astray. See? Speechless. Okay. Calvin, congratulations on this weekend. We'll give you the bat number. You're welcome to call in anytime. We wish you the best of luck this weekend. Obviously, we know you're kicking off that West Coast swing, but seriously, have a really good weekend. Shoot well, and thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Stay safe out there.
Yeah, no problem. Y'all have a nice evening as well.
Thank you. See ya.
Thanks, Calvin.
Yeah.
Calvin Heimburg.
Your DDO champion. And not going to fall in with the wrong crowd, no matter what anybody says.
No, he is a very wise man. I don't have any doubts that he'll be safe and secure and doing what he needs to be doing. But yeah, actually, you that is a good point. I heart disc golf. So don't you have to be 21 to gamble? That's a good question, actually, in some of those casinos out there. Obviously, I haven't had to worry about that for a lot of years. You might be right, though, that it is 21, now that I think about it out there. So Gannon
maybe cannot
maybe
gamble
not
yet.
Sneaking into the right places. Justin, all right, we'll go through a few quick things. Justin says, why isn't Vegas on the tour anymore? Really, they just the tour made a decision at some point in the offseason that rather than kicking off the tour and hosting the All-Star weekend over on the West Coast, they decided to kick it off on the East Coast and bringing the chess.com Invitational being the opening event, also then being in that same area the weekend before, ultimately for the All-Star weekend. I think there were plans at some point to possibly incorporate maybe a Disney-like or Disney World-like atmosphere and or setting or backdrop, venue, landscape, whatever you want to call it. It didn't materialize this year. I don't know if it will or won't in the future, but with them not doing being in Tucson or in Arizona to kick off the All-Stars, I think that snowballed into then also not using Vegas, because you're not going to be all the way out in Vegas to then bring somebody back to Texas to then go off in the other directions. It was largely a logistical thing. I know a lot of people in Las Vegas were clearly disappointed. A lot of people in Arizona were disappointed because we've been, kicking off our season in some capacity literally for 25 years out there, in some capacity. For many years, the Memorial kicked off what then became the National Tour, and Vegas was always the weekend before or weekend after, or whatever the case was. And then the Pro Tour rolled along, and then the Pro Tour was exclusively kicked off for a couple of years at the Memorial, and then Vegas was still kicking off or being part of the National Tour. Eventually, the Memorial fell off of the Pro Tour, and then Vegas became the kickoff, and then Arizona got used for the All-Star Weekend. So that was kind of all of that evolution over 20 and 25 years. And so this year was a very stark contrast to then head over to Florida to incorporate them the way that it was this year. And obviously we'll continue to see how it all unfolds in future years. I feel like the Florida area will likely be the kickoff for at least the next few years, assuming we continue to use the Brooksville course, the Olympus course, the way that we have, and how well received it was this year. It's it's likely going to remain on the tour in some capacity. And if it makes sense to kick off the season there, well, then that's probably where it will happen. So that's, I hope that kind of answers you. Real quick, speaking of the May 4th, also pretty cool in that James Conrad, Nate Sexton, and Will Schustrick also all share that May 4th birthday. Yeah. We, jokes have been made now for a couple of years. If you follow me and now more fancy people like Statmando, just the fact that like you think of the
three
highest
major
rated,
winners,
3 major winners, 3 USDGC winners, highest rated birthday. One could argue if in some average, if you average something out in that capacity, and then also coincidentally, they're all 4 years apart in age.
That's interesting.
Sexton brought that up a few weeks ago when we were talking about this very thing in Bend, that they're all 4 years apart from one another. Schustrick being the youngest, then Conrad, then Sexton. I think that's what he was telling me. So kind of interesting. Yesterday, a world champ, Valerie Doss, celebrating a birthday along with Madison Walker, and then, as I just said, Gannon Burr. So this little stretch here, and we got birthdays all year long, obviously, but this little stretch is quite jam packed with some highly.
Your hands must be sore from writing out all those cards.
Well, it's the stamping them. It's I do a stamp book, like I get out my Cricut machine, and then I do the whole handmade card thing, draw them all pictures of what it looks like for them and me,
together,
a
just
portrait
hanging
of
out.
us.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So that's what I try. But anyway,
Scott Pittner asks, how have the gallery crowds been at events so far this year? Larger, smaller, about the same as previous years? There has been some conversation online about the size of crowds. In general, I think we've seen a little bit of a decline in the numbers. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. DDO this weekend, obviously having a smaller AM field, where they used to bring in 1,000 people. This year, I think it was like 350 or 400-ish, I believe. So if you figure the same percentage of AMs are going to go on Sunday, clearly you're going to have a smaller crowd than if, the 400, we'll just say, versus the 1,000. I don't know. I mean, it's not shocking. I think you're going to see some bigger crowds in Portland. I think you'll see bigger crowds, obviously, some of the European events, because, again, they don't have the chance to see a lot of our top pros, especially you'll see it at more than likely the European Open. And then you'll probably see a decent crowd at Worlds. I think other than that, you'll see the same-ish crowds as last year. Des Moines always pulls out decent crowds. MVP it's always hard to tell the crowd size at MVP just because it's so weirdly set up as far as where the crowds can sit, because you've got like hole 8 and then they're going to have a new one at the top of the hill, and I think it'll be fine. But I think overall the events that we've seen, probably a slight decline in the number of spectators.
Yeah, and to be fair, one of the main pictures that circulated I was a little disingenuous in the angle. They showed the 2022, maybe it was 2021 or 2022, and then the 23, and then they showed a completely different angle of one of the holes that if they actually just rotated the camera like 90 degrees, there was a much more sizable gallery than what they were trying to depict. Now, I agree with everything that you just said in terms of, yes, the overall attendance is lower. I'm not denying that. But one specific picture that circulated, or is as we speak, I just felt like Yeah, it wasn't the exact same spot, so to speak, for all three pictures. It was the same hole, but then they were pointing to a place where there wouldn't have been as many people.
It's not telling necessarily a true story.
I think you said earlier that cameras lie, Johnny.
I did say the cameras lie, Terry.
So,
I definitely
sometimes they do. They don't lie in Vegas, so you be careful out there, Calvin. You be very careful. All right, couple other things. We just talked about that. Why are there no longer U.S. Silver Series events? I think there's some branding.
There's no need for them.
There's branding, and then there's opportunities and what they're trying to accomplish. Did they serve the point? And now we're seeing these Q series, which to me feel they're largely similar. In what they're accomplishing and doing. In fact, even more so because they're technically a qualifying event of sorts. And I think a lot of the golfers kind of replied that they didn't need more golf to play. And these silver events were put into these pockets in these scenarios where a lot of golfers were maybe thinking that could or should be a weekend off or a travel weekend.
But they were pressured to play because of the points.
Whether it was the points or some other external pressures. And so that ultimately ended up being the feedback. So couldn't Vegas have been a silver with live coverage? No.
Because those don't exist.
Well, A, they don't exist, but B, live coverage is now become a ton of money. I mean, it's never been cheap, but more than ever. If you want a full experience of a live covered event where you're talking about the 6 to 8 cameras, the drone operator, all the bells and whistles, all the people in the control room, all the replays, the graphics, the booth people, like we used to offer live with like 3 people in the early days, which obviously was literally just a fraction of what's being offered now. But I think if you provide less than the full experience, you're setting yourself up for ridicule and frustration from viewers. No matter how many times you explain it and say, hey, this is a lighter version of live coverage, people still would not. A, they would not read that. B, they would read it and not comprehend it. Or C, they would read it, comprehend it, and then still complain about it. So to offer anything less than the full live package, I can understand no one wanting to do. And then to top it all off, there's the protocols that go along with being on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. That then you're also having Disc Golf Pro Tour standards and other protocols that are in place that the local committee or local event may or may not want to necessarily adhere to. There's certain rules and things that the Las Vegas event may do this weekend that don't line up perfectly what you saw last weekend at the Dynamic Disc Open, just from certain standards and protocols. Now, of course, there's still going to be a professional event. They may do some things better. They may do some things a little lighter, but it's going to have a slightly different feel to it than if it's a silver event. And that's one of the biggest problems I feel like we have in all of disc golf right now is a lot of us have seen and heard that players of all levels, all skill levels and ages are going to your local B and C tier, and you kind of are expecting like Pro Tour level amenities or Pro Tour level stuff, just everything. And the Pro Tour is in an elite class of its own right now. And so just remember, when you sign up for that C tier at your local park, that probably has one person maybe running it, don't expect Pro Tour, don't have Pro Tour expectations. That's not to say they're not running a good event, but it's what we talked about earlier. There's this disconnect when sometimes you see what happens on the largest stage and you want to emulate or copy it, and like things like rope as OB, and then that can miss the mark. And then similarly, you can host an event and people are showing up saying, well, where's this and where's that and where's these things? Those things don't happen at that level often. That's why it happens at an elite level, because there's elite things that are going into it.
I was pissed there were no cameras this weekend following me and
I know.
And Paul Homan.
Yeah. So
couldn't believe it. I was like, hey, Paul Ullman's here, people.
Joe Ponytail asks a question. Why don't you roll credits for all those people that do the live production and camera work at the end of the live broadcast?
We used to actually
that used to happen.
Yeah, we used to do it
when it was like 10 of us.
When it was like 10 of us. So we could name all the cameramen. I mean, there are obviously.
That's a good question.
Yeah, 100%. We could definitely do that. I think there are obviously, give or take whatever you want to include, the control room, the cameramen, the people that help the cameramen, the guys that do a lot of the replay. I mean, the social media replays that are the PAs that are helping out, the stat guys. I mean, there's a lot you could do it. I think
the silent stream announcers.
Yeah, those are my favorite announcers. It's my favorite commentator. I think maybe it's just it's work to kind of keep that up to date every week, and B, you worry that someone's gonna be offended if you miss them. Like, oh, you didn't put me in there. I did,
Well, and again, it's not inconceivable. Clearly,
yeah, it could happen.
It could.
Just another step.
Yeah. That's above my pay grade. I'll say that much. Clearly, you nor I ever press those buttons or would create said document or file.
Nope.
Then the follow up to that would be, and could get figured out, but are you recognizing the local organizing committee as well in any capacity, and or your I almost said UDisc scorekeepers, your PDGA scorekeepers that are out there? I don't know where you draw the line. There'd have to be a line drawn somewhere, and like you said, that may or may not offend anyone, but yeah. I don't know. Is that common? Is that common practice for events of our magnitude? And what I mean by like other internet show platform like practice. I wonder if credits are normal or not.
I have no idea.
I mean, I've got I wouldn't be opposed to it happening, but I'm also not one to say, hey, I'm in charge of that.
Oh, whatever you want.
Or I need it to happen.
You want your recognition. Terry,
how is it doing?
How was it doing the general commercial? Did you negotiate royalties for every one of those generals sold?
I am flattered. I'll just say this. The same media production company that put together the Matty-O 4 More Years West Side commercial, they had reached out to me and said, hey, we have this idea. This was last week. Hey, we have this idea for what we're going to do. Could we get you to do a voiceover of sorts, or a voice read or whatever? And I said, an ad read, whatever. I said, absolutely. I would be honored to be a part of it. Sure. So I did that. And I don't know if I'm going to spoil. This is a Smashbox exclusive. There may ultimately become even an alternate ending or a follow-up sequel.
A sequel
to that.
Not a prequel.
Commercial, or maybe a series of commercials. I don't know. Wow. But let's just say I had even more work to do. So, yes, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate them.
I want to hear the outtakes of Terry screwing it up.
Honestly,
sure. Yeah, you're so good.
Pretty damn close to like 1 or 2 takes. Like, I think maybe there was 3, and there was only an extra take on one of them because I wanted to do it and be like, hey, here's another option. Let's do it one more time. But I don't know. I don't know how well they were received. I could only really hear what Ian and Germ, or Ian and Sarah reacted to, and they can't hear the audio. I did see a few people say and recognize like the special effects / graphics that legitimately went into making them was industry quality, like above our industry quality. And that's awesome to hear, because I know they did put in a lot of work. And for anyone that didn't hear it already, they legit blew up that basket. Like, went out with some, is it tannerite? I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't blow things up.
Not enough, apparently. But they legit like blew up and destroyed that basket as part of the overall production and process. So somebody tell me, I think it's tannerite, something like that. So yeah. It feels kind of weird to then be in the commercial, but I'm good with it, and I hold no I don't want to say loyalty, but I'm happy to help out. The crew that does those obviously is then doing a lot of media stuff for House of Dis. Hence, I did it with West Side, and then I had the opportunity to work for what ended up being a DD commercial But I'll work for anybody that wants to pay me. Did you find any? They did not say Dynamite. I know that. I could have swore it started with a T, but you're not seeing it. Anyway, they used legitimate TNT. Okay. Huh. Stan says, I just watched the Stokely live reaction show on YouTube. Live reaction, in like watch along for the final round?
Yeah, I think
Is that what you watched?
Yeah, I think he's been doing that.
I Heart Disc Golf said, I think everyone loved it. It is right up there with Jonathan's commercials. Well, that's high accolades and praise for sure, because I know everybody certainly loves those commercials over there at Latitude. He does such a great job.
Bob Goyke says Tannerite is right, Terry. That's the correct explosive.
Stan Man says the same. Tannerite. Okay. Not Tanner wrong. Tanner right. I Heart Disc Golf said, oh, yeah, this is something I did want to talk about. He says, you have 1 to 2 people on the ground, 1 to 2 people in the booth, producers, feed guys, sound guys, camera operators, drone operators, ground crew. Yes, all those. What I was going to lead to, though, is, all of that, and then I think even a few more you would include. What I will say is this was the first weekend, because a lot of people asked why was I there when Brian was there. This was the first weekend the Pro Tour actively said, let's have 2 people on course. Now, this was kind of officially technically done as well back at the Tour Championship last year when I think they had Germ on a card and then maybe Brian on another card, but that format is obviously very different.
Format.
But this weekend, I was brought there with the exclusive intention of being chase card reporter, sideline reporter. First of all, hats off to the Pro Tour for just in general saying like, hey, there's been a lot of action on the chase card. Let's have another person out there watching and seeing what's going on. Because otherwise you're asking like a Perkins or a Brian to either bounce back and forth or somehow try to know what's going on, in both scenarios. So I was really flattered and privileged to be able to go do this because this was not on my schedule.
And we saw in both divisions.
Yeah.
Gannon Burr and Emily Weatherman.
Yeah, exactly. So it was useful in that sense, very much so. Now, what I do want to clarify, sure, it was just one internet guy making trying to be mean to me. No, but what I want to clarify is someone had said something along of me being useless. That's fine. I'll take that comment. But they said I was talking over the booth and I was chiming in when not asked. I'm just going to tell you people so you know from the back end. There's going to be a slight adjustment if we continue to have this style of anyone being on a chase card. And we had 2 brand new relatively new color announcers in the booth. It's a timing and logistics scenario that needs to just get ironed out. Every time I spoke this weekend, I was instructed either by the producer or by Ian or the booth to talk.
So much like children growing up, you were told to speak when spoken to. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut.
Correct. And I did that. The problem was, in a few of these newfound scenarios, the booth sometimes didn't fully comprehend that they were to stand down while I was about to talk. So I have a producer in my ear, Mo, saying, Terry, we're going to Weatherman live on this shot. I want you to call it. So I would turn on my mic and I'd say, oh, we've got Emily. It looks like she's got a left to right wind. She's throwing it. Oh, it's on the right side. Meanwhile, potentially Ian and or Sarah didn't maybe hear that instruction. And they also then called the shot as they're supposed to do, except for when I've been called on to call the shot.
So it's just a little bit of coordinating.
There was a couple of times of that happening. So I'll politely say F off to the person who wanted to accuse me of just like randomly chiming in as if I'm doing it to get a quota of words in, or I'm so desperate to have airtime. Not the case. It's more of a case of this coordination that needs to be honed in and perfected. I was doing my job, and I'm not throwing the other guys under the bus either. I'm just saying this like needs to get ironed out, and then it'll flow much more smoothly. But to think that I'm just out there trying to turn on the mic and get words in because I so desperately need to hear myself talk, believe that is not the case. So.
Justin asks, could Emily Weatherman have shot a provisional shot? I said, technically you can always throw a provisional shot, but ultimately not really, because the decision was made. It was a group decision. It wasn't like a rules call, so to speak. It was a definitive in or out. So there would have been no point in her throwing a provisional, because if someone's not there, they're not going to be able to tell you whether it was in. It's not a question you can go to the TD and go, was I in or out? You can't use photographic evidence. You can't use anything like that. So there would have been no point. It's not like she was in a weird spot where it's like, I don't know if this is in or out.
If this section of the course is
correct.
In or out.
If this section of the course, this creek that I'm in, is that casual? Was that it's not that type of call. It was a definitive call. So while she could have thrown a provisional, it would have been a pointless provisional.
Yeah, what I would think would have happened, let's just play pretend and say she calls a provisional. She throws it both ways. Then the foursome, the entire group goes to the official and or TD at the end. They would explain what happened. And the first thing the TD would say is, well, what did you guys think? And presumably the other three who called her out would say, well, we all thought she was out. And he or she would say, okay, well, then she's out. Like that in that specific case, that's how that would have gotten officiated, so to speak.
Stanman says the no photo such video evidence is weird. Not really, because as we said, cameras lie, angles are funny. You take a picture of it one way, really slanted, versus the other way. There's so many ways that things can get skewed with cameras unless you're on site and looking at it directly yourself. I'm actually, being a video guy here, I'm totally fine with that.
What I will say to this is I absolutely could have taken 5 pictures that would have made it look so much more favorable for Emily. And I could have probably taken 5 pictures or angles that would have made it seemingly obvious that she was out. Like it was without a question of a doubt, where you're like, oh man, I was really wrong. Like as Johnny just said, it's all about the angle and seeing Felix's or anyone else's camera and then a blown up screenshot with the amount of pixels that we're offering. I promise you, here's what I promise you. Your angle and your assessment was not better than Rebecca Cox's or Natalie Ryan's or Jessica Weiss's.
But they weren't sitting in a Culver's like I was.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you didn't say that. I mean, if you got a concrete mixer in one hand, then yeah, definitely you have the right to make a call from 3,000 miles away.
I didn't. I had a mult, but still.
Okay, well, then you were qualified.
Okay, thank you. Someone asking, any De La coverage this weekend? I don't know if there is. If so, it's probably CCDG. That's usually who's covered De La in the past. But
no.
Okay.
Here's all I'll say, because I only know some half truths here tonight, so I'll keep spewing them.
Oh, good.
No, I saw a few weeks ago. I looked at De La Viega's event this weekend taking place, which is being presented, I believe, by DGA instead of Innova, which is a significant change from the past few years. But what I would say to that is, I saw on there a different production company that's not like one that's on the road. Okay. That's what was posted a few weeks ago.
Okay.
At least.
Well, then.
And so
I love a new group, honestly. I always hope that when we get a new group of camera people and editors that we see something different or original. According
to, now I don't know when this was posted, but it is on the official Disc Golf Scene. About this tournament, it says post-production coverage by, oh wow, they've added people even. Local Route Disc Golf.
I've heard of them.
Top World Disc Golf, which is the only one that I saw, I feel like, a few weeks ago. And then Myron Disc Golf. So MPO and FPO will play De La Viega Friday, 24 holes, tee times. Saturday, Pinto Lake, 20 holes, tee times. And Sunday, tee times for De La Viega, 24 holes. So that's what's taking place this weekend.
Okay.
And last time I had looked, which I feel like was maybe a week or two ago, I believe I only saw Top World Disc Golf. And I was like, oh, I don't think I recognize that channel or that brand in terms of post-production. So it looks like they've added 2 more to the overall list. So there you go. How, what, you know as much as we do now officially as to when and next day or not, commentators, cameras, who knows? I don't know any of those details, but that's what's posted to the disc golf scene. All right, unrelated to disc golf, you probably didn't get around to it, and I've only watched the first, half hour. The roast of Tom Brady.
Not going to bother. I think via social media, I think I've seen every funny joke on there.
That's possible.
I'm not going to bother. I don't care that much enough about it.
The little bit I watched of it, of course, I feel like all those roasts. I mean, I also always feel uncomfortable to a degree of like how deep. Obviously, that's the point. It's a roast. I get it. I'm not an idiot. But like some of those cuts really seem brutal. Again, I understand that's the point of them, but man, I think it's pretty long. And so I've only managed to watch like a half hour or 45 minutes of it. But I know it's very much, as you just said, though, social media has a lot of it.
Yeah, they have pretty much every main joke, the ones that made people uncomfortable, the ones that were vulgar, the ones that were, I think I've seen the best jokes come out of all of it, and I'm totally fine.
Because you're such an anti-Tom
I
Brady?
just don't care, honestly.
Oh, because you don't like funny.
I don't like funny, yeah.
It's your big funny list. Jerk face.
Yeah, that's what it is, Terry. That's what it is. Scott Pittner asks the eternal question that will cause a Wisconsin Civil War. Are you taking Kops or Culver's or Custard? Both of them, I think Kops are better, but it's also a slightly smaller brand.
So much more difficult to get your hands onto because there's like what?
There's 4 of them, maybe something like that in the area. Kops is I think a better food, and I think it's a little bit better custard. But Culver's is good. They're everywhere now. So
yeah, from just an ease and accessibility standpoint, yeah, I don't know. As people are saying, I only know Culver's in Ohio. Yeah, the same Culver's that's in Ohio, also in now Arizona and California and other parts of the country as they continue to spread. But yeah, Culver's started right here in Wisconsin. For those that don't
Sauk
know.
City. This year, I think we've talked about this. Top Chef is doing Top Chef Wisconsin. So they brought in all the chefs last summer, and the hosts, obviously, who are professional chefs and whatnot, they went to a bunch of the different custard places in the state, and the main host, Kish, she still won't say which one is her favorite. She's like, I honestly, I don't want to cause a problem. She's like, they were all good, but she's like, I have a favorite, but I won't say what it is, because I think they went to Leon's, which I used to live a block away from, which is phenomenal. Probably Gillies, which is great. Kops, Culver's, like just all the different places in the Milwaukee area.
Oscars. I don't know if they do custard or
Oscars does custard, I believe.
Is it custard? Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of places to get custard here, and
there's a reason I have such a beautiful figure.
they're all pretty good.
And while you're at it, you get yourself some cheese curds. Can't really go wrong with that. One disappointing note from this weekend, I'm embarrassed to admit. I went to Emporia, and I did not make an obligatory stop at Radius for anything, not for the delicious food or pizza or any of their beverages or anything of that nature. I apologize. I have failed you, Emporia.
I've been to Radius, but I would say I think I've only been there. I mean, I think I've only eaten there maybe twice of all the times I've been there, just because usually when we've gone there, it's been glass blown open. There's 1,000 people in town, and it's tough to get a seat. And
they're so popular and so good that
they're
exactly.
So usually you go in there and you're like, all right, well, I'm getting here at the end of the night. Maybe the kitchen's closing, or you sit down, you see somebody, you sit down and chat with them, and you've probably already eaten. It's all those things. So
Ryan asked if I did go to the sandwich place. I don't know if you're talking about Doobies or Planet Subs, but unfortunately neither. Again, I was on the down low for most of the weekend, and things were kept pretty low key for the most part. So no, unfortunately, neither. However, I'll hopefully make a redemption. I'll be there for a longer period of time. It looks like for the World Championships next month, the Masters Worlds. So I'll be able to fulfill all of those obligations that I feel like I need to be there.
Eric Sterner asked, so no live coverage this weekend? And I said, no, there is live coverage this weekend. The Copenhagen Open.
Yeah, just got to go to Denmark.
No, you don't have to go to Denmark.
No, that's where it's best to watch it.
Well,
is in Denmark.
It is
you're
best
on their time.
That's true. It is best to watch it there, but there will be live coverage of the Copenhagen Open. The production is going to be done by primarily an overseas crew, so it won't be
as part of the Disc Golf Network.
As part of the Disc Golf Network. So imagine a lot of the people who ran Disc Golf Stream will probably be participating in the Copenhagen Open on the Disc Golf Network now. So, and as I said to other people, there are a few people on that Copenhagen Open registration list that are playing Copenhagen, that played DDO, that are registered for OTB. I would be very careful if you're doing fantasy picks or if you're gambling or whatever you're doing. Maybe take a look at who's playing the events back to back, and maybe avoid them, because I have a feeling that we're going to see some people like Vinny talking about Turku. I think that you're going to see some players that you think are playing Copenhagen maybe not play Copenhagen. I don't know if that's... I can't say that for sure, but I would not be shocked to see some people withdraw last minute.
Tim says if there's a disc close to OB, you have to travel to Copenhagen. Yeah, there's. I'm not going to lie. There's been a lot of uncertainty about efforts from me this weekend, and Denmark was one that I very much had on my radar. Maybe I'll buy the ticket tomorrow and still go. But yes, I feel that I'm missing out in not being any part of that. But like Johnny just said, I don't believe we're seeing any of the U.S.-based Disc Golf Pro Tour media going over there. It's going to be European commentators along with their crews and their equipment, and I think Phil Delone, who does what's his official title? Tour director or something of that nature. That's something like that.
I just know him as Phil.
I think Phil's going to be over there in that capacity and role, but that's not a media related thing. So, yeah.
Well, Terry, we've got a Patreon giveaway tonight.
What?
We do. Patreon.com.
We got to roll those dice.
/SmashBoxxTV. If you want to be eligible to be entered into our giveaway every single week, it's $1. It's $1 to our Patreon.
Minimum.
Exactly. A minimum. I mean,
it could be more.
We could be more. Yeah, I mean, if you want to give us
more. We'll take more. We could use more.
Could always use a little bit more. Patreon.com/SmashBoxxTV, or you can enter in on the website. I'll tell you that another night. But 133 people are eligible for our giveaway tonight. I've sorted them overall by their address if they have it. So if you have an address, it's up at the top. If you don't, you're at the bottom. And I sorted it reverse. So
back that address up.
Solkensgaten is up at the top.
From
Mr. Mike Nielsen. So that's the city, I believe, that he lives in. So ultimately, maybe that's a street. I don't know. Oh yeah, because he lives in Uppsala, so that's probably the city. Anyway, that's the street he lives on. I'm doxing him. But ultimately, so that's our number one, and then we go all the way down to the people who don't have any addresses. But Terry, we have 133 people eligible for our giveaway tonight. Tell me, do you love me? And how many draws should I do?
3 in honor of Emily Weatherman finishing 3rd.
All right, that's as good as any reason to do 3. All right, our first number is 54. Our second number is 66. Our third and final number is 106. 106. So it's going to be someone who doesn't have an address.
Ooh, so we definitely need to have you look for an email from me.
Zach Webb. Congratulations, Zach Webb. Yeah.
Sweet.
There you go. You've been
thank you, Zach.
Yeah, you've been a Patreon supporter since 2020. Congratulations, Zach.
One of our favorites.
I'll send, no doubt. I'll send Terry your email. He can reach out to you, get your address, so we can get that stuff shipped.
I like it.
And Zach, if you ever see Terry, tell him you like his pants. It won't be weird, I promise.
No, I'm okay with that. I'll take it. Yes, rigged. Did I meet Ed Root out there this weekend? I sure did. Block party.
I miss that. I do.
Lots of good people. I want to take it in, and then you start walking, and then you talk to this booth and then that booth, and I love having all these conversations, seeing all of our pros out there hawking all their goods and their support discs, and just so many incredible people to connect with. I'll give Billy Lund a shout out. He was out there along with Joe Carey having a good time.
Good.
And Billy, there was the MP40 and other divisions also played throughout the weekend.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was awesome to kind of keep a wandering eye on some of those scores. Dixon Jowers finished in second. It was all said and done. And I apologize. The gentleman from Oklahoma, another gentleman from Oklahoma actually took it down, but Billy finishing in third, and all made for a good night at the Bourbon Cowboy. I had to.
I'm sure you did. You were forced.
I ran into the owner who recognized me, and
is it bad when a bar owner recognizes you in general, especially when you're only there
once or twice a year?
Twice a year.
Yeah, Susan, we're friends.
I don't doubt that. I think I've met her once. So
yeah, you have. Yeah, nice. She just welcoming to everybody.
I agree. It was fun doing the podcasts from the Bourbon Cowboy.
All right, I think that's enough. Holy cow, how did we go almost 4 hours tonight?
By having two guests.
That helps. And lots of great conversation. So, thank you everyone, for you crazy people that are still either here live and or you've taken in roughly 2 hours of regular show and then 2 hours of after show, whatever it's been. Thank you so much. Thank you to Calvin Heimburg for joining us. Best of luck to all the competitors, truly, in all these big events that I know I kind of rattled off this weekend. There's a bunch of them taking place all around the country. Maybe I'll show up at one of them.
There's going to be so much post-production over the next week.
I know, and that's what's crazy. And I've got some of my own post-production bonus action to still get released.
I wouldn't release it this week.
Yeah, so there's plenty of stuff that's coming. So to all of our Smashies out there, all of you live chatters, you guys help make it so fun, and you're the main reason why we continue to be live when we do these on Tuesday nights. We could really record these anytime, but the live interaction is just another layer of fun that's been brought along. So best of luck to all the players. Stay safe wherever you are, whether you're playing in a 1-round, 2-round, 3-round, or 4-round event this weekend. Be safe, play well, get those birdies and all that other good stuff. For Johnny V, I'm the Disc Golf Guy. That's SmashBoxxTV Podcast 505's After Show. We love our Smashies. We love you. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next week if you bring some good-looking pants. We'll see you then when you step inside the Smashbox.